Well, every road I see leads away from me. There's not a single one that leads me home. The road keeps saying, friend, come see what's round the bend. So is it any wonder that I roam? All the places I have been keep calling me back again. Down in the pines I hear the cold winds blow. My heart keeps telling me, foot loose and fancy free. And the road goes by and calls me as it goes. Well, maybe somewhere there's a someone waiting with a smile. And maybe there'll be some place I can stop and rest a while. And maybe you weren't meant to be just a rolling stone. And there's a road to travel on that leads you back to home.
I gotta remember, I gotta turn on this fancy new mic with the button below it.
Sounds good. Sounds really
Yeah.
good. I didn't get me one of those.
Yeah, it's $50. It's a dynamic. I think I sent you a link to it. If I didn't, I will. But yeah, that's pretty good. So anyway, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Tales of the Trails. Did we have one? Yeah, we had one 2 weeks ago. That's where we did the Jimmy Stewart stuff.
Yeah.
My days are all running together. I don't know what's going on.
The Tales of the Trails that shall live in infamy. The Jimmy Stewart one.
Now, welcome back to Tales of the Trails. So, anyways, yeah, we once again don't have a topic this week because the topics that I've been reading on is topics we've already discussed many times here. So this is just going to be kind of a general history, and when we find a tangent we're going to roll on tonight, we're just going to roll with it and see how it goes. And then the other thing we got going tonight is an announcement that I'm going to wait here about 5 or 6 minutes, and we'll make that announcement, and it's a pretty exciting one. So anyway, for those of you new here, Garrett's going to go ahead and read right on through that chat over there on the side.
All right. We have Madras Arsenal says, looking forward to see what's on tonight's episode. Hunter Savage said, ooh, just found this. Can't wait. Is anyone else here? Hello. You there. Yes, we're here. That was a lot of comments. Louisiana Gray said, looks like we got to wait 30 more minutes. Oh, that was quite a while ago. Diane Houston said, good evening, all. Guns and Water said, hi. Louisiana Gray said, and a good evening to all. Looking forward to hear what Duke has to say. Might have to say. 11 bang bang. Oh, that was me. We're getting ready to roll. Might be a few minutes behind. Or was that you?
I commented and I forgot I got to turn off the 11 bang bang half of it.
When we do this together, it's kind of because now we're all together officially on the deal, and sometimes we accidentally comment under each other's names.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, did you see the one about the Barber County rabbit barbecue?
Yeah. Yeah, it was quite the barbecue. Anyway, let's see, where were we?
You smart aleck.
Okay, so anyway, let's see. We're getting ready to roll behind Guns and Waters in. Says Duke is an interesting story. I know you're going to come up with something. Duke is an interesting storyteller for sure. Brandon Birch is in, so glad to see you all again. Guns and Water said, how about a little bit on where 11 Bang Bang came from? I suppose Duke wants to talk about that. We can a little later on.
Yeah.
But Garrett's been on the county-wide Barber County Rabbit Barbecue. I bet there was a few. What started out supposedly as 3,000-acre control burn got a whole lot bigger than that in a non-controlled burn real quick when the wind changed. It was one of those deals where it probably wasn't the day to do it.
I bet if you look close enough, you can still see the smoke on Garrett's face.
You can definitely still smell it in the beard. Like when you get on one that big, it'll be 2 days from now. No matter how much you shower, you'll wake up in the middle of the night just smelling it. It'll take 3 or 4 days to get out of your lungs. Let's see. 11 Bang Bang said hello. Oh, that was me actually. Carrie Stottlemyre says standing by. Jeremy P says hi everybody. Franz Push said hi from France. Sorry. Got given an H&R, the American, and 38 Smith & Wesson today. I level pocket revolvers. Louisiana Gray said, I hope you all is well. Gots Loco is in. Joshua Harris said, hello, gentlemen in chat. No apologizes 2018 said, good evening, gentlemen. Jolly Jake Lovell said, hello, fellas. Guns and Waters here. Saboteur said, hello. Chris Bird said, howdy. Remco said, greets from Amsterdam. It's 2:32 a.m. Okay, Carrie Sotomayor said, how's everyone doing? Jimmy's in the room again. David W. said, hi, guys. Brandon Burke said we should really be able to hear Duke's train rolling through with that fancy microphone. Duke said that he loves Remington revolvers. Mantis Toboggan said, good evening, gents. Sadly, I have family obligations that mean I will have to listen to this talk tomorrow at work. Listening makes my days easier. And there we go. We're running 40 and doing pretty good.
All right. Yeah. So, Brandon, this fancy new microphone, you're not going to hear, hopefully you're not going to hear the trains. This is a dynamic mic, so it's supposed to just pick up. It will pick up other background noises, but it's supposed to mainly focus like right here. And the reason I got this microphone was not because I really needed one. Well, I kind of did, but the other microphone I have is a condenser mic, and when I was recording for the podcast that I've been working on,
oh, you done announced.
Yeah, well, I hadn't really announced it yet, but I said when I record. I told people I've been recording one. Yeah, the condenser mic was picking up everything. It didn't matter what I did, just because filming in my house here wasn't that good. So then I got to read, and it's like, yeah, the dynamic mics are a little bit better about not having that issue. So I went ahead and I bought this and I started recording with it, and it made all the difference. Now I don't have to go and try to build a whole big fancy studio just to record podcasts. I can do it right here, and you put a little background music in there, and whatever background sound it does pick up, that background music will cover it right up. So with
background music is like makeup. It covers up a whole lot of ugly. That's what my uncle used to say about paint on welding jobs.
Oh, I wasn't ready for that one. So, anyways, so with that, yeah, the big announcement for tonight is the Tales of the Trails podcast is officially live. So we have created a new channel, and let me see if I can go over and link it from here. Give me just a second. I should have.
I don't know how you even do that. I guess you just copy it and put it in the chat.
Yeah. We're going to do that right now.
William Schlosser says, "Hey everyone, I hope all are well."
All right. So I just sent the link out there in the chat. It's the Tales of the Trails podcast, and we have the first episode is live. I haven't got a chance to upload the second episode. The second episode is done. And the debut, the first series that's on there is going to be Red Cloud's War. I know we've talked hundreds of times on here on Red Cloud's War. But with the podcast, I'm able to get things more detailed, like some of the other stuff that's going on that you forget about. Just because of the fact that I can record at my leisure, go grab the books. If I was to do that here on this chat, a chat that should take an hour might turn into 3 days to get all the nitty gritty stuff in there. So
have you released episode 1 already?
Yeah, it went live. I published it yesterday.
Oh, okay.
I figured it was a new enough channel that it wasn't going to get that many views. It got 1 view since I published it yesterday.
Well,
and I think that was me hitting a button on here.
I never got notified of it, so
Well, that's because you probably already seen it.
that could be.
So yeah, there were a handful of people, small handful of people that have already seen it that got the pleasure of having a preview of it. Just to make sure everything was good and I didn't miss any curse words in there, because I'm trying not to get any of those in that. But anyway, episode 2 is done. I checked it today. Red Clouds War was supposed to be a 6-episode podcast. I was going to try to cover Bozeman Trail in episode 1, 1865 War in episode 2, Fort Phil Kearny and Fetterman in 3rd episode. Hayfield was going to be episode 5. Wagon Box is going to be episode 6. I lied, 7 episodes. And then episode 7 was going to be the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty. Well, I got to about halfway done with the 1865 episode, and I realized I was at like 30 minutes on recording, and I'd only got halfway there. So that has been broken down into now 2 episodes. So this thing might turn into be quite a few more episodes than I thought. But as I was recording the 2nd episode, I thought I should go and should have done a full episode just on Sand Creek. But then I thought, no, if I keep doing that, I'm going to keep going back and we're never going to get to Red Cloud War. So, but anyway, yeah. So right now,
this is your audience that you never get to see, Duke. You're going to tell some Indian stories tonight.
Maybe. We'll see.
Thank you. All right. See you guys later.
Can I one of those peach waters?
Hmm?
One of those peach waters.
Yes, you can. Okay, sorry about that.
No
Anyway.
worries. So anyway, yeah. So Tales of the Trails episode 1, the podcast episode 1 is up there. So whenever you folks are ready, go on over there and check it out. Garrett has highlighted it right there.
It probably doesn't show up if you guys are watching 11 Bang Bang, because I don't know if it showed up on the 11 Bang Bang chat.
Oh, that's probably why.
Some people are saying they didn't see it.
We're broadcasting across 2 channels, because whenever we do it on my channel, we get hardly any views.
But it's just that right there. Basically, if you type in Tales of the Trails podcast, you're going to come up with something on YouTube.
Let me see what I can get.
Okay, they said it's up on 11 Bang Bang too.
Okay. Well, I did a search on YouTube and it does not come up with anything. Probably because there's only like 4 subscribers right now. But yeah, it's up there. And for anybody that watches after the thing, we'll put a link down here. Garrett will put the link down here in the description box of this live so that people can find it.
Okay.
But once we get it rolling, when you ever go over and see it, share it. We'll try to get that thing to start growing up. Get it to see if we can get it to get going. But anyway, like I said, yeah, episode 1's live, ready to go. Episode 2 will be uploaded here tonight. I'm thinking I might try to put a couple weeks between episodes, just so I'm not rushing to get an episode out. And then that's even if I decide to use a schedule with it. I may just do it whenever I have the chance and feel like doing it.
Guns and Water, they say it's up on 11 Bang Bang. Carrie Stottlemyre sees it over there, so I don't know. I'll just put it up here if you want to type it in. Right.
And I put it in the chat there. Garrett's highlighted it, but I don't think it's actually working in the link, so you might have to copy and paste it to get it to go.
Like I said, I'll link to it in the description of this live stream when we're done. Like Duke said.
And it's got a couple historic pictures for the backgrounds and such.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, we've got a couple new subscribers on there. So anyway, yeah, because I've got it open right now on there. So oh hey, 13 of you found it. There we go. All right.
That's probably why our numbers are dropping on the live show.
That's probably why they dropped. Everybody went over there, and then they got to come back.
Just lost 4 people.
So, that being said, Tales of the Trails Live is going to stay here. We're going to keep doing the live over here.
You know what would be a good idea? You should release them. Just an idea. You should release them on Wednesday, and then we can have the lives afterwards, and then you can talk about the subject.
I was actually thinking about that. That was one of the reasons why I released that other one earlier today or yesterday, because I thought that'd be a good idea to have it released and ready to go by the time we get done here, because I figured, nobody's going to find it. Like I said, nobody found it before.
Yeah. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want me to run through a few more comments right quick?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Sean Zimmerman says, hey, fellas. Diane Houston said, is it on YouTube? Yes, it is. Mantis Toboggan MD said, a future topic that might be worth going into. My supposed 4th great-grandfather, David Thompson, mapped much of the Northwest during the fur trade era. Lewis and Clark even used some of his maps.
Okay, we might have to look into that.
Todd B said, howdy, boys. Duke, I miss your videos and live streams. It has been many months since your last video.
Yeah, regular video, it's been a long time. I was planning on going out to Kansas and filming some next week, but I haven't had a chance to talk with Garrett about that. I might be putting that off just because I'm only going to get about 1 day out there. So I'm going to be able to go down there toward the end of May, and then I can spend 3 or 4 days down there. And also might be a change in my schedule coming up. Not a major change, just a small change in what happens on there. Which means we'll have to change when this takes place.
Are we going to get the Bowflex co-host again?
No.
Yeah, that's a deep cut. You guys have to have been watching a while for that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. We've been doing this quite a while now. You know, you and me have been streaming for almost 5 years. Not Tales of the Trails, but just everything.
Well, you guys come up in 2021.
Yeah, we were streaming before that.
Did we do a couple streams before that?
The first stream on your channel where you invited me over there was in 2020.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we're pushing up on 4 years then. That's right. Yep.
It was actually about this time of year in 2020. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, man, that's been a while ago.
Cool Hand said, hi, guys. Didn't know you were going to be on tonight. Guns and Water said number 19 down on the search, but he found it. Joshua Harris said, I know you guys mostly hit Western history, but I'm from Southeast Ohio, and one of our heroes and villains is Lewis Wetzel. He was from West Virginia era, but ranged all over my area. Oh, yeah. He almost went with Lewis and Clark all the way, from what I understand. He went a little ways with them, the way I understand it. Mm-hmm. Old Wetzel is sick in the head, and he never has an empty gun. Carrie Sotomayor said it popped up on the TV. I got Duke rolling on the phone. Jolly Jake Level said I found it just by searching for Tales of the Trails Red Cloud War. Gunsmith 4570 said link is working. Desert Rat said got it. Hezron 45 said hi. iPod Walker said with that straw hat and beer you look like an Amish farmer. Well, thank you. Yeah. Todd B said we were COVID buddies. Yeah. Barbara Frazier said, hey, guys.
You know, if he did shave the mustache, he might be able to pull that Amish look off.
Well, this is a hat from an Amish store, so.
Yeah, that's true. And he wears the suspenders, too.
Nothing wrong with that, actually.
Yeah.
There's a lot worse people in the world to be.
This is very true. All right. So, anyways, yeah. So the Tales of the Trails podcast right now, like I said, we're working on, or I should say, me and Garrett are working on it because Garrett has been most of the music talent, except for this second episode. I found one on YouTube that was a free royalty that served the purpose. But Garrett's playing a lot of music for it.
I was about to say, I get fired by the second episode, huh? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I was wanting to get it done, and your 2 days of give me 2 days to get a more somber tone.
I haven't had time. There's sometimes
Yeah,
I just
that's
don't
fine.
have the time. Oh,
Yeah, but no, Garrett's going to be providing a lot of music on there. I just wanted to get episode 2 ready to go. That's the only reason why it's. But you're still going to get to hear his lovely voice on there.
not my voice, unless I sing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my voice is on there, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it is. Because I decided that the main song we use for here, we're just going to continue that right on to the podcast as well. But anyway, yeah. So once we get done with Red Cloud's War, I'm trying to decide where to go next. There's lots and lots and lots of topics out there. But I have gotten a few new books. What all did I do with them? Oh, I gotta work on that tonight.
Jolly Jake Lovell said, if you want a topic, maybe talk about sources, good ones, bad ones, or even the good ones fully 100% trustworthy.
The thing of it is, there's no source that's 100% trustworthy. Even the most respected authors will get something that's wrong. The most trustworthy probably is a diary that's there on the exact day and being written as is. The only thing there that's not trustworthy is sometimes those people going across don't know where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to find 100% perfect sources out there, but you're going to find really good sources.
Just that subject there, I was just reading about how that Coulter came back after he went up there with Manuel the second time, didn't come home, but then he came back a year later and relayed to Lewis where all the mountains were, and he was way off. So their first maps were terrible because they just used his word for it.
Yeah. Trying to draw a map from memory doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, but not always. Anyway, one of the other books that I've gotten, I turned my microphone off, that I'm thinking about using here. I'm going to use it. I was going into on one of the next podcasts is the 1871 Yellowstone surveys. So if anybody's not familiar with that, that's leading up to Custer's first engagement with Sitting Bull. And yes, he went up against Sitting Bull more than once. The second time he didn't fare so well. The first time, it wasn't a direct action. It was more of, hit and run, harassment kind of things. But it was during the Yellowstone expedition when they were looking to make a railroad along the Yellowstone River up there in Montana, basically getting to the Bozeman goldfields and such, or Montana goldfields, getting in through Montana.
There were some interesting firearms in that campaign.
Mm-hmm.
They were still using Spencers, but a whole lot of Custer's guys up there that year were using single shot bolt action rifles, or carbines, I should say.
The military was trying to figure out what route they were going to go with a cavalry carbine.
And I can't even remember what it's called now for some reason. You probably know. Why can I not think of it? What?
Put me on the spot, why don't you? I know what gun it is. I just can't think of the name of it. It's a single shot bolt action.
Was Meriwether Lewis killed by an angry husband or an angry health?
Meriwether Lewis committed suicide.
I was about to say, I thought he was killed by his angry self.
Yeah. Everything I've seen said that he decided to end things on his own accord and did so. So that might be something we get into when we're looking in. But most of the stuff that I'm going to be going over is when we get on the podcast is stuff that I've already got books on. Because I counted them up. I've got over 300 books. And in this house, and this house ain't that big.
Ward's Burton Saboteur said, "Yep." Ward.
Yes, that's the one we were
Ward
saying. I knew it
Burton.
started with a W. I was about to say Winchester, and I thought, no, I better not open my mouth and say that because then I'll look like an idiot. But anyway,
Ward Burton carbine.
actually, I was thinking the Remington Keen rifle, but that wasn't it either.
Yeah, I don't
So,
think
yeah.
it was even around in 71.
No, it wasn't. I don't remember what year that one came out. So anyways, yeah, we'll be doing topics that I've got books on. And like I said, I got a lot of books. I've got more books coming in because I'm always ordering books whenever I can find them cheap on Amazon. That's the nice thing is that I don't think I've ever paid full price. Well, I shouldn't say that. I haven't paid full price for most of the books I've got. Some of them I had to pay full price for because they were ridiculous. And then there's some that I paid a ridiculous price and that was still cheaper than normal. But for instance, like this book on this one here, this book is actually worth about $40. Would have been brand new. I paid $8 for it. But this one is through the Arthur H. Clarke Publishing, which is done by Oklahoma University Press. And so it's kind of a fancier version of the book, gold leaf and plated. I've got several of these here lately, and all of them cheap, with one exception. I had volume 1 of Red Cloud's War. I had to borrow volume 2 to do a lot of research on it. And I was just dinking around, looking online, and to get the pair was about $250. Well, I happened to come across A Books, and they had volume 2 all by itself, $75, which is still more than what the 2 volumes went for together when they were still being published because they dropped it last year. So, yeah, but I got it.
That's a good topic. What's the most expensive historic book you ever purchased?
I got one over there I spent a couple $100 on. Actually, there I go dropping everything.
Is that the new mic, was it?
No, that was a can of Coke that got tipped over by the guitar because I had the guitar sitting here because I've been trying to strum the guitar too for music, and I found out that Garrett's better at it than I'll ever be.
I just can edit. That's the only difference. I edit a lot.
Because me and the guitar, I have not learned how to push these things down, and
I didn't know you had an acoustic.
Yeah, I do.
It's
been here in Colorado I've had this since I was a kid.
Looks like a classic. What's the make?
It's a Stafford.
A Stafford. Not familiar.
My dad pulled this out of the dump that used to be 10 miles from my hometown here. Mm-hmm. Didn't have any strings, didn't have a bar. It's slowly falling apart. It's bowed in here, and this is about to rip off. And actually, the arm's not bad on it. But it didn't have any strings, and this, whatever they call this piece here,
the bridge.
The bridge didn't have a bridge. That bridge right there is made out of a piece of PVC pipe.
That's what most of them are made out of nowadays. Plastic. They used to be a big thing. They were all bone. Bone. When you had a bone bridge, you got good sound. But even the high end ones now are just plastic.
But it still sounds good, even though it's falling apart.
Sounds good to me. Todd B said Duke and Garrett drinking regular Coke, which is like smoking Marlboro Reds.
I used to smoke Marlboro Reds.
Oh, I don't have a Coke tonight. Just to.
You better not have Marlboro Reds either. Your mom will kill me.
iPod Walker had a question up here. We've answered this one before, I think. Why is the Pepperbox smoothbore and not rifled? As far as sights, you could put a bead on each barrel.
So do you hear it?
Yes, I do. Just barely.
Dang it. I was hoping. Because the window's open. I really hear it.
Not as loud as normal.
Part of that is that I don't know if it came down to something to do with the Colt patent. I know part of it would be is that boring out a smooth bore is a lot easier than trying to rifle something that's got a dead end on the end of it. Because they don't go all the way through. They just drill them down in so far and then drill a hole in the side and screw in a cone on it to hold the cap. Putting the sights all the way around it, that thing is made for up close and personal. It's not really made for aiming. So,
which is
and on
another
top of
reason
that,
why the rifling would just be an extra expense, because it's not made to shoot that far.
right. And then on top of that, you've got this hammer that's going to come straight up and straight down.
Literally,
well,
right
if you're using that hammer for that thing, you think a Colt shoots high. Just wait till that hammer comes to its full height, and then that bullet's going to go woo and drop, half mile away.
I've got one over there, and it's a piece. I can't touch it for the live chat, but one other thing I've always noticed is, in order to use the rifling, you have to have a ball that fits extremely tight, and there's no loading lever. So you'd have to ram it all in with a short starter, or what most people do, just put an undersized ball in there and wad over it.
Right. Give me a quick second. I'll be right back. I gotta go grab more Coke.
Garrett, have you acquired any new trapdoors lately? Yes. I haven't filmed it. Bought the 1870 rifle, which is rare, really, really rare. Only, now I got to say off the top of my head, I want to say only 12,000 were made. And of those 12,000, they made 320 carbines. And so I found a 1870, one of the 12,000, that had a smashed end into the barrel, and the end of the stock was broke. And so we scooped it up for a pretty good price, and we're going to actually go ahead and make it into a carbine, because the barrel end is ruined and the end of the stock is ruined. So we will have a usual. It won't be identical. The barrel taper is a little different on a real carbine, on one of the 300 carbines, but we wanted a carbine, so we're going to do our best to turn that one into it. And it's not like we're bubbaing a good gun. Somebody smashed the end of the barrel with a hammer, it looked like, and smashed the end of the stock. So I have two of the rare 1870s after that.
Yeah. And plus, to get an actual carbine is what, $10,000 for one gun?
Yeah. And that's why it's just going to be easier to just make one out of this one. That's the first thing I saw when I was like, the rest of the rifle's in great shape, but looked like somebody ran over the end of it with a truck. And I was like, well, that's what we're going to use it for. Oh, let's see. There was a few questions. Jolly Jake Level said, if I had a spare grand, I would pick up a Leroy half and 10 volumes of Arthur H. Clarke. Really? Here's a train too. Kaito Ojama's in. Hey, haven't seen him for a long time.
Yeah.
Hello, Duke. My 31-32 caliber Kaito Ojama VKJV Universal Trapper Hunter wad cutter bullets are out. Man, I said that like Paul Harrell.
So, and I noticed that on Facebook, Kaito, but I don't hardly comment on Facebook anymore. If anybody's interested in a nice wad cutter bullet for a little pocket pistol, that looks like it's I wouldn't say hog killer, because I don't know how about putting it up against a hog, but it definitely get the job done on anything else. And one of these days, I'm going to test the Kaito bullets that I've got sitting over at my uncle's house. But I think I'm going to wait until May. I'm going to be going out to see Garrett and them, and we might just burn some powder out there when I go out.
You've got a lot to burn.
I got the caps. I got the powder. Although I noticed I pulled a couple caps out the other day just to make some noise starters, and I pulled out one of my good 10s, and the caps weren't going off. So I don't know if they got drew moisture or it was a bad batch or what, but I bought those like 2019, 2018.
I think Jake, Snapper, I, and you have all had bad caps from that 2020 run, 2019, 2020 run, the last one they did in a big hurry. Some of them are different size. Some of them don't have ignition, the fulminate in them.
I've never had a problem with the size, but I've had problems with detonations before. But I took 3 out, and 3 of them back to back would not go off, and I put the cap on 2 different guns. And then after that, I had 4 go off without an issue. So,
Yep. Yeah, Todd B. It's not a carbine yet. It's a rifle. The only trouble I have 2 issues, and a lot of people always ask me, why don't you film your gun work? First of all, I don't do it the way most people would like if it should be done. It's probably. Second of all, it's hard to work around a camera. And third of all, YouTube will hammer you for taking anything apart. Like when I do a video on a gun that I want to like examine, I always take it apart off camera because they'll flat out hammer you nowadays for twisting.
I'm surprised
on one.
My videos on disassembling Colts and Remingtons and stuff are still up.
I bet they were grandfathered in a little bit.
Maybe, or maybe they just don't get enough views to draw any attention to them. But
Ethan took the lock out of a flintlock the other day on a video, and they smacked us hard. They didn't strike us, but they age restricted us.
Yeah. And see, that was the other thing. I went in and I age restricted all my videos. I had all that. I thought, that was something. It was Dustin Weingart said he got age restricted a number of years ago, and so I just went ahead and I did it ahead of him, and that might be why haven't been getting hit.
It might be
because I went and did that ahead of everything else.
Okay, we have some serious questions here. Let's see if we can roll through them here. iPod Walker, what's the update on the 1776 pattern rifle build? I have no idea. You have to wait for Ethan. He's kind of running 11 Bang Bang right now. I'm only here for Duke's chat. I'm not making many appearances there at the time being. Todd B said, make a video. The old carbine, lots of us will watch. I've been obsessively collecting Smith & Wesson Model 1905s and 38 Special. I prefer the pre-model 1920 models. You can find them cheap. Hardy says, hello, you silly humans. Tim O'Neill said, hi, Duke. I need some help with replica harness and saddle for artillery wheel mule with accessories.
That one is going to be above me. Because I have not dealt with that kind of stuff. I don't even know where to start to look, to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't have a clue. I can't even think of a source. What you might do is if you're on Facebook, go over to one of the reenactment groups, because there's some guys that are pretty serious into that artillery back east. And I'm sure you can find somebody that can point you in the right direction for what you need, but my knowledge on that kind of stuff is not there.
Yeah.
I can tell you a little bit about civilian style saddles. I can tell you a little bit about cavalry saddles, but when you start getting into that artillery and harness stuff,
yep.
Put it this way, I can drive a team, I can't hitch up a team.
You mean talking about that's where you ride the mule on the front of the
yeah, because
they take the case on, you pull the case on with the mules and you ride them just full out.
Yeah, there's always there's 2 guys that would ride both in front and back of each other, and then 2 guys that be on the limber, and depending on your gun crew, there might be more riding horse or riding behind, but like on a 12-pound mountain howitzer, it only needed a crew of 4, and so you just have 2 guys on mules and 2 guys on the box. But yeah, I have no idea on that one.
Todd B said Mark Novak does it. Well, here's the thing. Mark Novak does not have the trolls that 11 Bang Bang has.
That's true too.
We have people that absolutely hate us, and anytime we step on a rule wrong, we will get, because YouTube doesn't just search for it. People report it. Like we had an opening video on our live stream on the Reload Show, and on that video, Ethan was holding a flintlock and actually loading it in the video, but not on live stream. We got hit for loading a gun on a live stream. They took it clear down. So Mark Novak can get away with it, but if it just happens to be who you are, I think I know who does it. And I'm not going to say who, but there are certain people that don't like 11 bang bang, and they will hit us.
You can tell me who after the chat.
Oh, you don't know them.
Oh, okay.
Probably family members. Diane Houston said, "Hi, Garrett. I emailed Ethan yesterday about Bass Pro had Remington 10 caps. Did he mention it to you?" No, Ethan and I have been on separate fire trucks all day, and to be quite honest, I haven't pulled a trigger on a cap and ball revolver since the last Colt video. Oh, they're sold out now anyway. So Joshua Harris said, "I wanted to thank you guys. I modified my 3-click Birdie Model P. It's now a very smooth gun with a great trigger pull. I wish it was a 4-click, but I got it for a great price. Go Duke."
Yeah. There is a way to do it into a 4-click hammer. It will cost you a little bit of money. There's only one place to get it. Don't tell them that you're getting it for a 3-click. Tell them you got an old one that sear or something broke on. You have to get the hammer and trigger, but it can be done, and it'll run you, if the parts are in, it'll run you $150, $200. But all I can say about 3-click hammer is shoot Black Hills ammo or any ammo. It's got a silver primer on it. Don't shoot anything with a brass primer. That firing pin won't hit it hard enough.
Tim O'Neill says, "Era for Fort Union." What does he say? Osage? But it says,
yeah.
Era for Fort Union on Osage.
Is that in regards to your harness and stuff? Like I said, I have no idea on that one. Yeah, your best bet's going to be, for that kind of stuff is to hit up a Facebook reenactor group and see if anybody knows anything on them. That would be the first place I would go to. I do know a guy personally that's dealt with some of that stuff, but trying to get him to message back is kind of like pulling horse teeth. So, but yeah, that's where I would check on them.
Atlatl Man says, "Duke, where'd you go? Do you have any good books on the Seminole Wars?"
I don't. That's one thing I wanted to read up on because, especially when I was doing my research way back in the day when I was really into the Texas history, I was wanting to do a little research on that because Captain Samuel Walker, he had fought down there in the Seminole Wars with the Pattersons. The Pattersons were used down there. They were tested down there. But I never found the books. But one quick way to start finding sources, look up the subject you're thinking about on Wikipedia or you're wanting to learn about, and go down there and go to the reference list and then start looking up those books. Now, sometimes you're going to find books that are referenced that are complete bogus. So you kind of have to, be a little careful when you're looking through them, but a lot of times they're going to be pretty decent books and they'll start putting you in the right direction. The big thing is to look at the publisher. If it's published by a university, like for instance, the Clark is done by University of Oklahoma Press. That one's pretty good. Bison Books is usually pretty decent. Let's see, what have I got here? That's Bison. Anything that's through a university usually is going to be decent. Now, that being said, there have been a few that have come through universities that are complete junk. But yeah, that's where I would start. Is a good place to look is on the Wikipedia and just scroll down there to that book section. Because off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone for that.
Well, there's a little bit of it in Haven and Belden. Very little.
Yeah, there is.
Just
because
the
talk about
stories of
Pattersons,
Colt's
yeah.
journeys down in there with the Pattersons.
Mm-hmm.
Very little.
Very little.
Like maybe half a page. Guns and Water said that's far out. What could set someone off on 11? It doesn't take much. It's YouTube. A lot of people don't see the worst comments that we get, and it's not just us. I mean, Duke had someone threaten to kill him once.
Yeah.
You don't remember that now?
Very vague.
It happens to
remembering.
every channel. If you start doing history and it goes against the main things is people have these romances about especially when you're doing firearms history, the firearm they have. And if you even so much as don't even disparage the firearm, but question the history that they think is right, well, they will. Well, you don't see most of it because I have a language blocker on mine, so I get a lot of that, and we have a Confederate flag in the back of a few of our videos, and that just people can't stand that. That's the main thing.
Yeah, all them.
But the worst person I know who gets it, the worst person I know who gets it is Willard from Everything Black Powder, Jake. Duke started a few years ago with the idea that, and you came up with it first, the idea that he thought that it's possible that the Colt Single Action Army could be more powerful than the Walker. And you remember when you first brought that up, Duke? You said somebody needs to we got Jake to test it. And it was kind of Snapper, Duke, and we all kind of got together and got Jake to test it. Oh, my goodness. There are people that, well, for years they've said that the Walker's the most powerful, and they've sat around the coffee shop bragging about how they have the most powerful gun. And they really got their feelings hurt in that video. He's had really, really bad feedback from some people. But yeah, it doesn't matter what you do. If you're on YouTube, you're gonna get them.
If you want to, there's a few things you can do to really tick people off on YouTube in regards to Captain Balls. Is as we just discussed, anything's more powerful than the Walker. Say that Colt's better than Remington. I'm trying to think of another one here. Oh, and say that 1911 is better than Glock.
Oh yeah, but that one, or that Pieta has better steel than Uberti. That's a big.
Oh one. Yeah, that one. Yes, yeah,
that's a big one.
Me and
nobody ever said Pieta's YouTuber. Better. We just said that the steel in Pieta is harder.
Me and another personality on YouTube, I'm not going to say his name, got into it one day, and not on YouTube. This was on Facebook, because I come out and stated that the steel on Pieta is better quality steel than that in Uberti, and they blew up on me. And I told him, I said, go to Walmart, get you the cheapest set of Chinese rat tail files you can find. You lay the hammer of the Uberti down and the hammer of the Pieta down, and you just take one swipe across there and put a little pressure on it. But start with a Uberti. Because if you start with a Pieta, you ain't going to have any teeth on that file left to do any cutting when you get to the Uberti. Because on the sights on all my Uberti guns, I open the sights. That's one of the first things I do when I get them out of the box. Is I take a little triangular file, go into that rear sight, and I widen it out so I can see that front post. It takes two swipes to open up that Uberti rear sight. When I did it to the Pieta, I had to get a Dremel with a diamond blade, and I still ruined the diamond blade. And this guy blew up.
What's sad
me.
Is nobody's saying it's a bad thing necessarily.
And he was throwing a fit, and I finally told him. I looked at him and I said, "Well, you know what? Being that you've got all Ubertis on your channel," I said, "I guess they're paying you to say this." And when I called him out on that, man alive,
I've gotten it too on that subject.
But yeah, it was
There's just
Uberti
certain
can do
things
no
that-
wrong. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'll agree. Uberti's a better gun. It's a better looking gun. But if you want one that's going to run, that's going to last forever, and you ain't going to have to put parts back in after 2,000 rounds, go with a Pieta. Because as ugly as they are, them things are built to last. It's kind of like a Glock. They're ugly as hell, but they're built to last.
Wild West Extravaganza, Josh is in here. He said,
All
haters
right.
gonna hate to this day. The most hate I've gotten was from an old video where I said Bigfoot didn't exist. I thought it was the French singing and the John Coulter thing on your last video, Josh. The French singing really, Frere Jacques going up the river. They were singing Frere Jacques. Some people didn't like Josh's rendition of Frere Jacques.
I'm gonna have to
I
go
wrote
watch
back to
that
that
one.
guy. Said, "You must be a ton of fun at a party." I can't remember something. A guy said he couldn't stand. He was leaving because Josh made fun of the guys with Frere Jacques or something. I can't remember, but it was hilarious. Oh my goodness!
But Josh, yeah, you never responded to that message I sent you on the phone the other day.
Josh said, "I've been called the songbird of my generation."
The sun saw the songbird.
Josh has had some great ones. I remember the first one he had me going on was his a Dalmatian dog where he wanted to pretend like he was Gus McCrae. So he went to the paintball wars and had to cut the old blind dog's throat. For a minute, I didn't know anything about his channel. For a minute, I was like, man, this is one tough kid. But he was just joking. He did not cut the throat of any Dalmatian dog. Whoa.
I remember that one.
You remember that too?
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh my goodness. Okay, back to some serious questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's get back at it here.
Louisiana Gray said, has somebody gotten hurt feelings over Remington? Oh, yeah. And we're not necessarily, we're just like stating an opinion, but people will take it like fight to the death on that subject.
Oh my God. And the one thing that just drives me nuts, absolutely drives me up the wall.
You can switch a cylinder on a Remington, but you can't on a Colt.
The Remingtons were better than Colts because the soldiers could swap them. Show me the evidence.
Where are they getting all these cylinders from?
So I sat down because before that, the only time I knew that cylinder swapping had taken place was with the Pattersons, because the Pattersons were shipped with 2 cylinders, and the Texas Rangers, when they got their Pattersons, each one had 2 cylinders. And when they talk about the Battle of Walker Creek, where they used the Pattersons against the 80 Comanche, they had to swap cylinders somewhere in the middle of that fight, because it talks about, they were all firing their 10 shots out of each pistol. So I got to doing the digging, and I found a lot of sources on cylinder swapping. Every single one of them was a Colt. I never found one reference. One reference. With the exception,
I got one, Clint Eastwood.
Oh, God. The only exception with the Remingtons is when they went to the cartridge era and they started going to the cartridges, they made the cylinders and they could swap between back and forth. And you could take the cylinder out and but nothing along like what they were saying in the Civil War. And the thing of it is that has become so ingrained that you can go online now and there are sutler vendors that sell a freaking cartridge box that holds 2 cylinders in it. It's like, I got the books over here that talk about all the ordnance things that the Army bought. There's never once a mention. I've never seen one original that carried spare cylinders. Yep. So the spare cylinder thing is
the funny thing is, we just take it as a joke, We don't care that much, but there are people that just, if their gun isn't exactly what they thought it was, and even if you bring sources, they're going to be mad.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He really want to piss them off is bring sources and really prove them wrong.
Yeah. Space Art asks, anything you can tell us about effective range of round balls out of a muzzleloader rifle. I've shot only conical bullets, and round ball needs a slower twist.
Well, the only thing I could say is I watched a video of a guy hunting deer in Pennsylvania, and he dropped a doe with a round ball at 200 yards. It can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Shot her through the heart and dropped her in her track.
Yeah, Ethan can make shots out to 300, depending on the size of your ball and the weight and the energy still carrying. But a round ball will lose energy pretty quick after 300, I think. But that's not saying somebody can't.
Gained a lot of respect for muzzleloaders after I watched Grantham's video on flintlocks, because they were shooting ballistics gel torsos with those flintlocks, and holy Moses, I always thought it was just an in and out and that was it. My goodness, he was shooting a 54. I think it was a 54, and it blows out a chunk. But the thing of it is like, on modern bullets that blow the chunk on the exit, this thing's blowing a chunk out on the entry because that ball's going flat.
Yeah.
Which
now consider a Civil War Burton bullet 58.
Yeah. So and that would make sense why when Lewis and Clark were going across, they talked about you could shoot a grizzly bear in the head 15 times and he still keep coming. That ball was flattening out before it even got a chance to penetrate.
Well, it depended. When they got their rifles, they thought that was better. I was reading the Journal of a Trapper because I had that when you pointed out, and I thought that was a pretty good story in the first, how all the old guys on the trip were telling him, don't mess with that grizzly, don't mess with that grizzly. Well, he thought he would go in there and shoot that grizzly. Well, he shot it, and then the other guy shot it, and then they ran to the trees and reloaded, and the other guy shot it, and that thing reared up, and he just fired from the hip and got lucky. It shot it to the head. It had 9 bullet ball in it before it went down.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No worries. I was just going to say a few more of the chats are popping up there.
Yeah, we need to I'll get down them.
But yeah, no, I gained a lot of respect for them muzzleloaders. A lot of respect. So I have no problem now if I go deer hunting with that. As that's one thing I was always worried about. I was going to have to track a deer, but after seeing that, no, we're going deer hunting one of these days.
Yeah, and try it with a 62 caliber rifle.
Oh my God, try it with a 75.
No, that's what I want to try. Because, well, I get that, but the rifle will carry a patched round ball and a rifle will actually kick out. I mean, I got to say that 62 caliber rifle's got to be equaling that Brown Bess in energy because it's not leaking gas.
Yeah, that's true.
So I can't prove it, but I think. Kaido said the Beaumont Adams Dragoon 50 caliber and the Joseph, whatever that word is, Schneid model of 1860 55 caliber are more powerful than the Walker. Yep.
And hopefully here in another year or two, there's going to be an available reproduction of the 50 caliber Beaumont. The 44 calibers have not hit the United States yet. They're hitting the European markets right now, but they're supposed to be coming in here pretty quick. And then the 50 caliber is going to be right after that. And I'm not going to bother with the 44. I've got enough 44s as it is. But that 50 cal, me and some other guys on a channel called 11 Bang Bang might have to split the cost of one of them.
Yeah, we might have to. The Best Badness 420K said, I do wish Pieta made all the stuff Uberti made. Carrie Sotomayor said, I do own a bunch of Uberti. Love them all, but they're soft as peanut butter. All you guys have to do now is claim the earth ain't flat. Yeah.
Don't get me started.
That'd be another one.
The Flat Earth Society has members all around the globe. Now think about that.
How in the world could you think of that? I mean, how in the world did you come up with that?
I'd seen that on Facebook a lot.
Oh my goodness, that's good. That's good. Josh Harris said they get the switch from Pale Rider. Yeah, Kent said good evening all. The best badness 420K said, would 1858 cylinders have even been interchangeable like they talk about? Snappers
No.
had several originals, and he
Yeah.
couldn't get them to interchange because they didn't have the interchangeability in their revolvers that Colt did. A lot of that was handmade when Remington first took off, at least early in the war. Now, we can't say later on it didn't get better, but at least the ones we see
on
early.
a Colt with that ratchet in the back, a cylinder can be fit to the gun. With a Remington without that ratchet, and it's got a flat back, the gun has to be fit to the cylinder, and no two cylinders are going to be identical.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't come about until post-Civil War, and then Remingtons start to get pretty decent.
Well, here's a good question. Outlaw Man said, first of all, Sleepy Leap said, gentlemen, I'm sorry I missed this one, but I will watch the recording later. Thanks for putting on a good show. Good evening to everyone. Outlaw Man said, Duke, what do you think about the Mountain Man sketchbooks, Voyager sketchbooks, Long Hunter sketchbooks, etc. from Hansen? I like them, but some people have told me not to trust them.
So the thing about sketchbooks is that a lot of them have to do with clothing, cutlery, guns. Hansen is drawing them from originals.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to give Hansen credit. He runs the Museum of the Fur Trade. Well, he's kind of retired and he still does the publication part, but Hansen is a very, astute historian. He's actually got a PhD. It's actually Dr. Hansen. But his is a good reference for clothing. So yeah, his stuff is decent. And some of the things he's got in there come from the Alfred Jacob Miller paintings. Actually, take that back. I'm thinking of the 1837 sketchbook. But yeah, they're a good place. They're a good source to start looking at, period clothing, if that's what you're into, or period gear, because it's stuff he sketched from originals.
Mm-hmm. Just a thought on that 1837 Miller book. And I'm not swearing to this in any way, but I was doing some research on it because I've been using it a lot. And I noticed, the first thing I noticed was the drawing of the trapper takes a bride.
Mm-hmm.
First, I was because I was very interested in that red stripe, what looked like pillow ticking bag that the trapper has in there.
Yeah.
The trouble is, Miller drew that. And then years later, when he got back to New York City, he was hired by a collector to paint it.
Yep.
And the painting has the stripes, but the drawing doesn't. And in the sketchbook of 37 shows up with the striped bag in it. And so I got online, I did some research, and some people are like, well, he changed that. Certain aspects were changed later on. And the 37 sketchbook isn't his sketches, it's something somebody's put together, right?
Somebody has sketched those sketches from looking at the paintings.
Exactly. And what you got to be careful of is because everyone wears the exact same type of pants and the exact same type of moccasins. And none of the moccasins are the hard sole Plains Indian moccasins.
No, a lot of the mountain men, they just made them out of deer hide because that was easiest to do.
But some people's explanation for that was he redid the paintings by memory and maybe he didn't include everything.
Well, and the thing of it is when they're up there in the mountains, those mountain tribes, they didn't use the hard plain soles a lot.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was more of a plains thing. Out here, we've got a lot of cactus.
Yeah. They're pretty nice. I've been wearing them for a while.
Yeah. So that was more down here. It's like I'm working on a pair of moccasins. I've been trying to beat them up because I wanted a pair of beaded moccasins because that was actually pretty common. I've even seen it in photographs in the 1800s of guys, starting in the 1860s of guys wearing beaded moccasins or quill worked moccasins. And I can't do quill work to save my life, so I'm just going to stick with beads. Yeah, so the sketchbook is based off of that, and I could see red striped cloth being used for a bag because pillow ticking, blue and red stripe were common back then. A lot of the things we think is more modern, paisley print, like you see on bandanas.
Mhm.
That actually, I've got photographic evidence of that in the 1840s.
Yeah, what I found interesting was the amount of corduroy that showed up in the corduroy. So I actually made a bag
But
out of corduroy.
corduroy today is not same corduroy
It's
was back then.
they had bigger, whatever they call it, where they have more great room between the gaps.
Yeah, it's a little different. Because I made a pair of knee breeches out of corduroy and I got told I couldn't use them because they're the wrong type of corduroy.
I saw a guy the other day who was going through some of the fort. I can't remember which fort it was, but there were several items that were going up for fur trade to rendezvous, and some of them were sandpaper and rubber overboots. A type of rubber overboot.
Yeah, they were around.
Yeah, and I thought, well, that's just kind of crazy to think of. Sandpaper and overboots.
Yeah, sandpaper is referred to back then as grit paper a lot.
That's what he called it.
Yep.
Sorry, Dustin's in. He says, hi, fellas.
Hey, Dustin, we were just talking about you a little bit ago.
Hi, Dustin.
I don't remember what the topic was, but we was talking about you.
Tim O'Neill says Dixie Gunworks wide earth brass frame 44 1851 12-inch barrel brass frame. I am 81 years old. I guess if you want a gun that technically didn't exist but could have been. I would go for an iron frame. If I would say it would be more plausible to see an iron frame 51 Navy and 44 because one or two of those did exist, but they had fluted cylinders.
Yep, that was during the about 1859, 1860 when Colt was starting to do prototypes. You see a lot of weird things.
Mm-hmm. There's
like
at least
51 Navy Pepperbox.
I didn't actually see that one.
Come out. I finally found a reference to an original. It was one of Colt's prototypes.
Oh, I believe it. Loading levers, top brake, dragoons. They had everything.
Yep. They made a root dragoon, which that one hit, what was it, James Julia auction or Rock Island, one of those auction houses back east. That one come across on YouTube for a while. They had a root dragoon. It was 44 caliber root side hammer, and boy, it was a beautiful gun. But then they went with the 1860 Army.
And I can't imagine a root being that big, having handled a root a lot. That would be a front heavy dude.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Dustin said that must be why my nose was itching. We're doing pretty good here. We got 63 people in here.
So
Saboteur had a question here. I accidentally skipped it. You ever going to get to New Mexico history during the fur trade or the Nez Perce fight?
Yes, eventually.
Didn't we cover some New Mexico fur trade history at Christmas time?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it. So yeah, the New Mexico, because I got to go back and read about it. But it was Joseph Walker, Kit Carson, a lot of those guys trapped down there in that area because in the early 1830s, when beaver tickets first hit, and everybody knows about beaver taking the hit in the later 1830s, 1836, 37, 38, thereabouts. It took a hit around 1832, 1833.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a major hit, but it basically come down to is the beaver up in the northern country, which are darker in color. They have a darker fur. They're almost jet black. They weren't in as high a demand. The price dropped. But the beaver from the southern Rocky Mountains were still pretty valuable. They didn't drop near as much in price. They were still in demand. And so suddenly you start seeing trappers kind of start going that direction down into New Mexico.
That sounds risky. There's a whole nother government down there.
And that was, and trappers trapped that area before then too, because technically up there, like Bayou Salad, which is South Park, the Rocky Mountains in Colorado that were being trapped, that was technically in Mexico. But the thing was, the further south you got, the closer to Santa Fe you got, which means a greater chance of being caught. Joseph Walker was the only one that got permission from the Mexican government to trap beaver in the mountains down there. He's the only one that got an official permit. But trappers would go and trap in those mountains, and then they'd ride into Taos and trade the furs in Taos for goods. Nobody catch them because there's no officials in Taos. They're all down in Santa Fe. The other option is come out to Bent's Fort and trade your beaver there.
Didn't Jedediah Smith get nabbed down there?
He got nabbed down.
He was in California.
No, Jedediah Smith?
Yeah.
Either in southwestern Kansas or the Panhandle, Oklahoma, or maybe
Well, not where he got killed. He got arrested by the Mexican government as a spy at one point.
Oh, yeah, that was when they first got to California.
Yeah, that was in California. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't. I think it was probably west of me in southwest Kansas where he probably got it down
somewhere along that Cimarron cutoff.
Yeah,
somewhere down in there.
I can't imagine I know what this country was like in 1868. I can't imagine how wild this country was in the 1830s. As this country down here, they didn't want to let go of not one little bit.
Right. So, Bings, we've kind of jumped up a number here. I'm just going to remind everybody again, and then we'll go back into the chat here. Tales of the Trails podcast has launched for all you that are coming in late. First episode is live on there. It's the first episode in a series on Red Cloud's War. And I'm going to post a link here. And Bang's people said they've been having a problem with it on 11 Bang Bang. I'm going to post it via 11 Bang Bang too. Maybe that'll
there you go.
Help out there. But anyway, head on over, subscribe, check it out. First episode's up. Episode 2, I'm going to get uploaded, and it'll be live in a couple weeks. I'm not going to do many faster than every couple of weeks. Otherwise, I'm just going to start burning myself out on this, and I don't really want to do that. And it may start getting slower than 2 weeks. It may just be whenever I can get it done, especially with summer coming. I'm going to be doing a lot of fishing and stuff on my days off.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to write a script for one of these things. My goodness. Episode 2, I spent 6 hours yesterday writing the script, and I spent another 4 hours recording. It takes a while. So anyways, that's going to be, it's on Tales of Trails podcast is the name of the channel. That's where that link goes, is to the channel. I'm not doing it on here. And the Tales of the Trails live stream is going to stay here. We're not going to cloud that up over there with live streams. Not right now anyway.
Yeah, Josh, I think you and Jolly Jake are right. Liberal Ulysses, that area. It's kind of the way I've always understood it. Just out west of me. Let's see here. There was a question here. I don't know if you know, but Arizona frontiersman said, how far back do pyramid tents go?
Francis Parkman writes about him when he came out, which was, oh God, put me on the spot again. Now I got to get over here on Google and look up when Francis Parkman come through. But he talks about him, and there's mention of him in the fur trade.
Are they like what I'd call a diamond tent?
Yeah, diamond tent, pyramid tent.
I've heard some people say that they aren't a thing in the Revolutionary War time necessarily, but that could have just been
no, they're not
somebody
in
on
the
YouTube.
Revolutionary War, but they are definitely in
The fur trade.
the fur trade. Okay, when did he come west? Blah 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 blah. Yeah. Okay, don't tell me when he come across the Oregon Trail. Tell me about everything else in his life, but don't tell me about the Oregon Trail.
Well, we know it's post 1823 then.
Yeah. Let's see.
Cool Hand said, Duke, you can write a script when you fish. And Saboteur said in the 1830s. Jolly Jake Level said 1838 question mark.
Right. He published his book in 49. Oh, 1846. Yep. He went up the trail. and 46 during the Mexican-American War. All right. So, yeah.
Arizona
then,
Frontiersman said, thanks a bunch.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
So, anyway, yeah. So, Francis Parkman talks about the diamond tents back then. So, just don't get a real big one. But yeah, there's mention of them. And I know during the fur trade, there's a couple mentions of them too. I just cannot remember where I read them or where they were at. But if I remember right, I think I remember reading at one of the rendezvous, there was a couple pyramid tents, which makes sense. I mean, pyramid tent's the easiest thing to do. You need 4 stakes and a post. Stake each corner and put a post up in the middle, and you're done.
Yep. Kaido
Wedge tent-
Ojama.
Yeah.
Cylinder on the Root Dragoon looked as long as the Walker cylinder. The Colt 1848 second model Dragoon with the hinged top strap looks interesting. Colt invented the top strap revolver.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if I would not give that to the Adams in 51. It's very possible they come out about the same time.
I think the patent on that is 49.
Maybe it could very well be on the Adams or on the
on top strap Colt.
It could be.
He patented it. It's in the Bible. Haven and Belden.
Yeah, it's right down there somewhere.
So,
but we can all agree that it came out a long time before 1858.
Yep. Yeah, they had to wait for Colt's top strap patents to expire before they could start producing it.
You're going to start getting hate mail again.
I know I'm going to start getting hate mail.
Kerry Sotomayor said he ain't going to write no script while he's fishing. What's the matter with you?
For one, I write scripts on the computer because it's quicker for me to type than it is for me to write. And sometimes when I get to writing, my brain outthinks my hand.
Yeah. That's right, Kaido. I forgot about that. In 1842, Colt made a 36 caliber top strap revolver. I forgot about that. Top strap Patterson's.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, technically it came out with the first revolver then. But I will contend that the same reason that he didn't stick with it is the same reason that a lot of people shouldn't have until 73. They just catch too much fouling.
Yep. And Colt got past that by putting a bushing on the cylinder.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this gets us in trouble or not, but if anybody's wondering what we're talking about on the bushing on the cylinder, this is a 73 cylinder. This is the bushing that goes inside there. The base pin goes through that. And so you've got 2 pieces that are rotating. So
I'll hide my eyes.
It will hold fouling because you've got 2 rotating surfaces in there. My Colt 73, I can shoot black powder through it all day, and it might get a little sluggish, but it never jams up. My Remington, 15 rounds, forget it. It's bound up.
Good question here for you, Duke. William Drummond Stewart cut one of his trips west short due to a scandal. Any idea what the scandal was?
That one I do not know.
Oh, I thought you'd know that one for sure.
Yeah, no, that one I do not know. Now you're going to have me looking that one up.
That's interesting. I never heard of that one.
Yeah. I know he came out.
So him and Campbell were together for a little while, right? After Sublet? Or was it him and Sublet after Campbell?
Oh, God. You're going to put me on the spot again. See, the problem with my fur trade knowledge is that I've read so much about the Indian Wars that has gone.
You forgot about it.
The human brain can only contain so much knowledge. And everything I knew about Texas fur trade has been going away because I've been doing everything on, the Indian Wars stuff.
I tell you what, Robert Campbell's been a hero of mine here recently.
But yeah, the big reason why I know a little on Robert Campbell is because he had a lot to do with Fort Laramie during the fur trade and after the fur trade. And he had something to do with Bent's Fort.
One of the few that made it. Gina Wood said, howdy. Saboteur said, fired my Remington today. Barely got through a cylinder.
Yeah, that's...
Okay, so I'll... Yeah.
What's that?
I can't. There's only one way I found to get through more than a few cylinders, and that's with Blacky's gun butter. But been accused of being a snake oil salesman, so I'm not going to say anything else about it. Crisco.
Oh my god,
That's another
That's
one.
the
If you
other
say that
thing.
anything's better than Crisco.
That's the
Crisco
other thing
will get you
on
in
there.
trouble.
Is Crisco is one of those topics that's just as hot as the discussion between Colt and Remingtons.
You don't need anything but Crisco.
Put Crisco on it. Yeah, because Crisco was just plentiful during the Civil War.
I loved your video.
Don't you know they burned the Crisco factory?
Oh, I remember texting Jake saying if their comments on Crisco blot out the sun, we'll fight in the shade. That's how bad it was one day over on Everything Black Powder. There was a guy over there we officially dubbed the Crisco Kid. Because, man, you remember the Crisco Kid, dude?
I very, very, I kind of remember that.
Oh, nothing's better than Crisco. I told everybody, I said, raise your hand if you started on Crisco and then moved on to something else. Oh. Okay. Alpine Gulch had one here. I'm not quite sure I understand what he said here, but he said, Duke, I found from Drew a few years ago. Duke, I found from you. I don't know exactly what you're saying there. You might want to rephrase that. Let's see.
Yeah, the only day that I got through multiple shots with the Remington is the day that I was putting boar butter over it, and it was a god-awful mess.
Gina Woods, I certainly hope Noah wasn't the Crisco. Oh, yeah, because Noah, they called him the Crisco Kid, my little brother, because he took a bath in it when he was a baby. So, yeah. But I was about to say, I hope he wasn't the Crisco Kid, or we're going to be coming to odds. Sabador said the crows can keep them. What were we talking about? Oh, the Remington. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and everybody says, well, the Remingtons were more popular than the Colts in the post-Civil War. There's a reason for that. The government bought just about an equal number. It was a little bit more heavy on the Colts, but they bought 200 some odd thousand Colts, 200 some odd thousand Remingtons. Well, when the Civil War got over with, they said, now we don't need all these arms. Why don't we get rid of the ones we don't want? They surplus the Remingtons.
And the Spencers.
And they did surplus a lot of the Spencers, too.
Spencers and Remingtons went out quick. You always have to remember, though, when we talk about those numbers being close, the biggest year of production for the entire war was 1864. Everything from Springfield to Remington to everybody. And the only person not producing anything in 64 is Colt, because their factory burned down in January of 64.
But still, Colt was able to put out 200,000 Colts.
Yeah, in the first 2 years of the war, basically.
Yeah. So that was the only reason the government, they were buying all kinds of guns from all kinds of different, because there's more types of guns in the Civil War than what the Army has vehicles now.
That's no joke. I would have hated to be in ordnance officer.
Savage revolvers, you had Colt revolvers, and I'm not talking about one standard. You had Savage Navies, you had Savage Armies, you had Colt Navies, you had Colt Armies, you had Stars, you had single action Stars, double action Stars. You had there was
Smith and Wessons. All Smith and Wessons took off in that time period. You had Colt Pocket Navies, Colt Pocket Polices, you had Colt 60 Armies, you had Colt Dragoons, you had Colt 51 Navies. Not every one of them had the same cylinder size.
And one of the most interesting things I found, and I got to give full credit to Mark Hubbs for finding this, and I made the video on it. And that was after I consulted with him. He didn't want to do the video, so I decided to do it because we thought the information should be broadcast across. They did testing in the 1800s, and the whole cap jamming thing that we have now, the issue of, you got to modify your Colt, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to put a post in, you got to go to slick shot nipples, you got to polish a hammer face. when you read when they were testing them in during the Civil War in the 1860s, they came out with a report that basically said there are two types of caps out there.
Mm-hmm.
Ely's double waterproof only worked on Colts,
Mm-hmm.
but they would jam Savages and Remingtons. The regular Ely's caps jammed the Colts, but worked fine in the Remingtons and the Savage.
Yep.
And the caps that we have today are closer
Single-walled.
to the regular Ely's. They don't make one of the Ely's double waterproof because that thing is about twice as thick.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening is that cap, when it comes down, when that hammer comes down, just blows it to bits. But with the Ely's double waterproof, that cap would retain its shape, and then it would fall off. So the cap jam thing is actually a historic thing that's been around for a long time.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, it just when the right caps were applied, it happened because there are records of it happening. But I would say it's probably an equal amount of jamming on Remingtons and Colts when they're using the correct caps.
There was a report
because Remingtons just stop.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've had a cap jam on a Remington, and it's harder to clear than a Colt.
When you can't get the cylinder out, you're kind of up a creek.
When it wedges itself between the cylinder and the frame, you are screwed. You are absolutely screwed.
Yep.
Because I mean, it binds it up. So anyway, that's my tangent. Yeah.
Jolly Jake Level said, to be honest, Colonel Colt had to sell some snake oil now and then, along with the laughing gas. Yeah, he did.
True.
Dr. Colt from Calcutta, C-U-L-T. Kerry Sotomayor said, my first cap and ball pistol was Pieta 58, and it shot fine, about 3 cylinders worth if you kept it greased.
And that's the thing. I mean, the Colts, you do have to keep them oiled. So it was like when I was shooting, I was using greased wads. There was enough grease in there to keep things lubricated. And then the wad would actually go through and scour the barrel. And I've proven that on video. You shoot a Colt with grease, you're going to be cleaning it for the next 6 months. You shoot a Colt with a wad.
You're seasoning it. You're seasoning it.
you shoot a Colt with a wad, and about 3 patches, I can have that barrel clean. 2 wets and a dry, and that barrel is clean. So, you know, there's take and give, but wads weren't a big a thing back then. In fact, I don't see any references to them. In fact, lubrication wasn't much of a thing back then. The bullets, which came in boxes, were dipped in beeswax. That's the only lube they had.
Civilian cased root pocket model back there. If you open the lid inside that box, it says load the cylinder with powder. Doesn't say how much. It says fill the cylinder with powder. Press the ball below countersink.
Yep.
Using neither grease nor wads. And that's dumb on that root revolver because that dude jams up like crazy after about the first 5 shots. But it said that on all the Colt revolvers. It said don't use grease nor wads. So
if Colt says it in the originals, then yeah, wads were a thing, I guess, back then. But
it says neither grease nor patch is what it says, I think, if I look at it. Okay.
So anyway, that's our tangents.
We got over 70 people. We're back down to 69, but we had over 70 a second ago.
Yeah, we were doing pretty good here. But that's because we're across 2 channels. Most of them are on 11 Bang Bang because 11 Bang Bang gets the most attention.
Okay.
Because I don't upload enough to keep it up.
Alpine Gulch said, I found Duke from Drew. Drew used to be Living History Comes Alive.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Drew, yeah. I haven't talked to him.
I haven't heard from him in a while.
A long time. Because now it's Living History Mysteries. He might have changed it even since then. But yeah, no, he was a good guy to chat with. But yeah, I haven't been on one of his things for a long time.
I don't think he's even has the same channel anymore. It's a paranormal thing now.
Paranormal, yeah.
Jolly Jake Level said Whitney Navy pistols, lots of them too.
Yep.
Kerry Stottlemyre said, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I forgot the Whitneys when I was talking about them earlier.
Yeah. Carrie Stottlemyre said soft Uberti hammers that form a ring in the hammer face.
Yeah, I made the mistake and I dry fired a 51 Navy with slick shot nipples in it one time, and that thing, big ring.
Yeah. Tim O'Neill said Key West Pirates and Cannoneers, quartermaster, pirate schooner, 62 overall. Yep. Kerry Stottlemyre said I was 19 talking about when he got his first Captain Bolt revolver. Didn't know jack about black powder. I'm 52 now. We're caught up.
Yeah, I've only been into it for, I don't know, a little over 10 years now.
I'm post-generational.
I think Garrett was probably into them before I was.
Well, my uncles and grandparents and everybody, like, my uncle was around during the 70s boom, the Jeremiah Johnson boom. And so I grew up with the Thompson Centers. And I always thought that was so cool. And Davy Crockett, too.
Right.
So I remember going shopping. I remember my dad had actually had one of a Marlin Model 6022.
Mm-hmm.
When I was old enough to shoot by myself, I didn't care. I wanted that one because at least I could pretend like I had a ramrod. I wanted a muzzleloader. That was all I wanted so bad. And I wound up with an inline. Was the very first one I bought when I was about 10 because I could afford it.
Well, it's funny. When I was about 18, I started getting interested in the Civil War. And started kind of getting interested in the mountain man thing, too.
Mm-hmm.
And I went down to the gun shop. We'd always go through there just to look at what they had because I was really big into cowboy guns era. I wanted my Model 92 Winchester and my 73 single action be just like John Wayne. So I walked into this gun store and he had two muzzleloaders there. It was a 50 caliber Kentucky, and then they had a 50 caliber back action, which I think was an original because he wanted $800 for that thing. And that thing was in pristine condition. Still had case hardening on the lock. I can remember it to this day, and I've seen pictures of that gun now, and it was kind of a rarity. It was a back action lock with double set triggers. And I was just today doing some research and looking at some of the Alexander Gardner photos from the 68 Fort Laramie Treaty.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a picture of a native. In fact, I was going to send that to Sabater because the guy had the silver plate belt thing on the back of his hair. I'm sitting there looking at it, it's like that was that gun. But 18 years old, $800. I had never even held $800. I hadn't even had $800 in my bank account at that age.
Yep. A lot of those Lehman's had back actions. A lot of the early ones, when I say early, late 1830s, not all of them, but there was a run that he did of back actions.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of cool.
But this one was definitely a little fancier. It had double set trigger. It's just like the one in that Alexander Gardner photo. And, thinking back now, I wish I'd have done it, but there was no way I could have. But I had the money at the time. I could have bought the 50 caliber Kentucky because it was, 80. It was under $100. I remember that. But my dad was, wouldn't let me do it because he said, you're going to blow yourself up. Because I guess that's the way they'd always thought is, you get one of those, you could blow yourself up because my grandfather grew up in a time period where guys were probably pouring smokeless down, not even knowing the difference and blowing a gun up. So I didn't do it. It wasn't until I got to college and I still had that interest in it. I got to watching Mike Bellevue on YouTube and I finally decided I just needed to go do it. So I was sitting there one day and I didn't have very much money in my bank account, just a couple $100. And I went on Cabela's and they had the brass framed 44 Colt Navies. And they had a short barrel one there. And I think it was like $120 and I bought it because payday was like 2 days away and my bills were caught up. So I bought it. And it started a thing because the next year I really, really screwed up. I had a very bad money spending problem when I was in college because I bought a Walker and then I bought a 1860 Army and then I bought a 58 Remington. Now the Remington I only paid $100 for. So, yeah. And then the next year, I didn't buy any for a while there, but at that 44, it was sitting right there. I still have it. I need to put a new spring kit in it because it doesn't have a trigger bolt spring in it, but it's still there. It would still work if I got up and decided to shoot it.
Yep.
But it's just that now that I know better, it's kind of like I don't want to touch it. It's kind of a RB thing, but yeah, it's still there, and it's one of those that's probably going to be around for a long time.
When I was little, we didn't have VCR. We had an old TV screen, one of those consoles, the big ones, from like the 70s, and Atari 2600, and that was all I had. My uncle one time brought over a VCR and hooked it up to that thing, and he left a tape, and it was the complete, not movie of Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. It was the complete series with like stuff that wasn't in the movie. Right. And I just remember falling in love with that. And I knew my uncle had it at Thompson Center, and it was fancy. He'd had it tricked out, was engraved. But, of course, it was the Thompson Center. It wasn't authentic. Not a lot of people knew back then. It wasn't in Hawken, but they called it that. And I just wanted one so bad. I mean, even 5, 6 years old. And so my brother and I, when I was 10 years old, and we were mowing lawns. And then we had $100 between us. And this was my brother Juan and I. And we walked into Walmart and we said we want muzzleloader. Well, they showed us this inline, and we were like, no, that's not the muzzleloader we want. But it was the only one they had, and it was like $90, one of those cheap inlines. So we bought it. And later that year, I think I wound up with my first U-car. And also later that year with mowing money, a fella in the community sold us a Remington Model 1858. Well, we call it that now. It's the Remington New Model Army Pieta. And so all that came when I was 10 years old. My 10th year, I had an inline, a U-car, and a Remington. And all the reenactors I knew said, don't get a Colt. You can't swap cylinders. Okay, this is that older generation of reenactors. You know the guys, right?
Yep.
And so I didn't get a Colt until I bought a brass frame when I was probably 19, 20. No, I was older than that, actually. Probably in my 20s. And I was like, man, I've been missing out. This thing's better balanced. It shoots better. And I put 2,000 rounds through that Colt. Even though it was a brass frame, 36, 51 Navy.
Yep.
And I absolutely loved it. But yeah, I've been in a muzzleloading thing for a long time, but I was held away from Colts by people who, quote unquote, knew better. And if I'd have bought one, they'd have laughed at me until I had to go out there and realize for myself, well, this generation may not know everything it thinks it does.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was, and the funny thing is I'm such a gun nut. It's like my family wasn't real big on guns. Dad had a few. My uncle had a few. My uncle, he was always talking about buying kind of the newer ones. But matter of fact, when I started hunting, my dad, the year before we started hunting, gave me a 16 gauge single shot shotgun. I still got that in the safe. It's almost the exact same model as my grandfather's. My grandfather's the model 37 single shot Winchester 16 gauge. Mine's a model 37A, so it's a little longer barrel and got a different hammer on it. But I was scared to death to shoot that thing. I would not shoot it. We went out to the gun range. I would not shoot it. I'd shoot my 22 all day. I had a 22 Henry. Shoot that all day. But, man, that shotgun just scared the living daylights out of me. And finally, one day we was out there dove hunting, and dove come over, and I just, without even thinking, pulled up and I shot at it. And I haven't looked back since.
Yep. Yeah, Carrie Stottlemyre said, y'all are youngins. I had to go to the library and read books to figure out black powder. I had to have the lady at the local gun shop adjust her book. Yeah. You know what's funny? I had nothing other than my uncle, and he moved away. And when he did, I had no idea that I shouldn't just open shotgun shells and fill that Remington cylinder up with shotgun powder. And I did a couple times. And that's one of the reasons that Remington is supposed to be getting worked on over at Snappers right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no clue. measure the powder in a muzzle loader? Who would have thought such a thing? We just opened the end of the powder horn, poured down until we thought we had enough. Right out of the horn.
Yeah.
Then YouTube came along and I found out everything I'd been doing wrong for 15 years.
And that's the thing, like, small town like where I'm at, you go to the library, and I remember there was always an interest in guns when I was a kid because I went to the library and they had a book on Old West guns. And I checked that thing out and brought it home, and I looked through every picture on that, and they had all kinds of guns that I didn't even know it ever existed. But if it hadn't been for the internet, I probably would have never learned anything about black powder.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you wouldn't have found that in my local library.
I'll tell you one thing. Back then, my uncle had a bunch of DuPont powder he'd picked up in the 80s. And so it was good DuPont black powder. And he never had to buy any because he'd picked up this big batch way back when. And I think that might have been kind of before Pyrodex, because at one point I remember he bought a can of Pyrodex. And the way he would do it is he would shoot his gun till he couldn't load it. Then he'd clean it.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't clean that thing very often. He'd shoot, if it was getting stiff, all right, we'll shoot that one out and clean it. He did that with Pyrodex. In 3 days, he had a rust bucket. He wound up selling it. It was so rusty. Yep. I remember he took the Pyrodex out on the sidewalk, spelled his name, and lit the whole can. And that stayed black on that sidewalk for probably 6 months.
Yeah.
His name was spelled on the sidewalk.
When I started out, I used Pyrodex because you couldn't get a hold of black powder. You just couldn't find it. Nobody would deal it because it is considered an explosive. So a lot of the gun store that I always went to up in Rapid City, their insurance wouldn't let them have it because they were a building that's in a series of buildings. The whole block is one giant building in reality. So their insurance wouldn't let them have it in there. So all they had was Pyrodex, and I shot that a lot. But my Hawken rifle, which is Invest Arms, it's very similar to the Thompson Center. I shot that in there, and when I was cleaning it one day, I didn't get it perfectly clean. And it's now got a little rusty spot about halfway down the barrel. And if I use a real tight ball and patch combo, that thing gets halfway down. Then I got to go find a rubber mallet, and I've got a fiberglass ramrod for it. And I have to beat that all the way down past that spot and that might be why my bullets string out in lines. Like elevation on that gun is always perfect, but they always shoot in a line about that wide across. Just in a perfect line.
That's why I don't like it when people knock those style of Hawken, which I get why they do if they're not authentic. But everybody started with those. If it wasn't for that style of Hawken, we wouldn't exist. If it wasn't for, I always say that, Jeremiah Johnson at the time, but honestly, if it wasn't for Davy Crockett, we probably wouldn't have the black powder community we do today.
And the way I see it is, if I'm going to go out hunting in rough country where I got a chance of tearing up my gun, I'm not taking a big fancy $1,000 rifle that I spent $1,000 on to get with a nice fancy maple stock. I'm going to take that cheap Hawken. I paid $300 for that thing. If I break the stock, I can buy a replacement stock.
And they shoot like crazy with that 1/48 twist.
And the stock on that, I break the stock on that. Yeah, $100. I got a new stock. You break the stock on a fancy maple, it's more than what I paid for that gun.
No kidding. Yeah, exactly. Well over $300.
Yeah. I think we got to go back and catch up on some of the chats here.
Okay. Let's see. Hardy said, my first gun was a Thompson Center Scout in the line. It was the first gun. I was the first gun nut in the family. Mom barely tolerated guns. Dad had two, but took no real interest. Carrie Stottlemyre said, y'all are youngins. I had to go to the library. Okay, I read that one. Louisiana Gray said, yeah, my first black powder was a 69 caliber flintlock pirate pistol. It was given to me when I was 7, and I am now 52. Hats off to you. You've been doing this a long time.
Yep.
Atlatl Man said, I learned on a Pedersoli 3rd pattern Brown Bess, family friend owned. I was 10. It was a bit long. I bet. Carrie Stottlemyre said, because the first pound I bought, I was 19 years old and can't buy powder till I'm 21 years of age. Jolly Jake Level said, I was only 30, but it was only 30, but it was a real genuine Hawken. Wow.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
What's that?
Said, let's not go down that rabbit hole tonight.
I seriously read that as something he was saying. I completely forgot about Jeremiah Johnson as I was reading that. I don't think there actually was a 30 caliber Hawken, but I think there was a
30
38
caliber out here in the West. No.
Well, I think he found that out in the movie pretty quick.
50 cal. Well, I mean, you see some 45s, but 50 cal is typically on the low end.
Yeah. That's why I want a 62 caliber Virginia rifle. I think that would fit in great. Actually, I got my mind on a Ketlin Fowler first, though. Ketlin's the name that keeps coming up in the trade manuals for the book, or for the handguns anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Carrie Sotomayor said the Colts were higher specky birdies, from what I understand, unless you're talking originals. Reenactors are parrots. I would say, and Duke can correct me on this, there's a big difference between a reenactor and a living historian.
Oh, yes. Very big difference. And you see this all across the thing. And you'll even see it in living history groups, too. But you get some living history groups, and I'm not going to be specific on any of them, but you get some where the guys are just there to do something fun on a weekend. They've got great gear. They do the research on their gear. They've got top-end gear. They don't know road apples from oranges when it comes to the history of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get some that just want to play, and they won't do research. And when I mean play, they don't even really put much into their uniforms either, or their equipment. And then you get the living historians that go out and, they might come back snake bit. They might come back 20 pounds lighter. They're the guys that actually want to go out and do living history. And then they're the guys that are so big on it, it wouldn't be surprised if they come back with syphilis.
Oh my!
So,
I'll tell you how bad it's gotten. One of the reenactments that I reenacted in just last year, I showed up with my gear that I wear on the channel: flat hat, bib shirt, canvas high-waisted pants. I was told to take that outfit back to Australia because cowboys in the Old West wore cattleman's creases. I had wool pants or canvas pants on, and the guy told me you have to have denim jeans. I was like, oh boy, this is the difference between reenactors and living historians.
Yeah, denim was a thing, not that style.
Yeah, no, not that style at all.
Yeah, no, and you see that. And there is, when you get into it, there is a division between the two groups. One thinks they're better than the other. But it depends on what you're doing too. So, I've had this discussion with Santee, whereas the kind of stuff he's doing, they're always putting on shows. If they put the money into the high quality stuff, they will quickly ruin a $200 to $300 pair of pants. It's a lot cheaper just to get a pair of $60 pants. That kind of stuff, I understand that. I can live with that. But then there's some of us guys that, we'll spend that $200 to $300 and then go crawl in the mud at some event. And
are you picking on my historic emporium because you're a South Union Mills snob?
So one thing I'll say, historic emporium, not what you consider top of the line for reenacting or living history. South Union Mills is getting up there. They do machine stitch, but wherever it's visible, it's hand stitched. The problem is that historic emporium is going to last a long time. You can wear the hell out of them, and it's cheaper. And yeah, I'm on my chat, so I said a bad word. But anyway, whereas South Union Mills, I've worn their pants. I love their pants. Their pants are so historically accurate, you'll wear them out if you wear them constantly within a month. And that was the thing that happened back in the day. I forgot which one I was reading, but I was reading about a guy that was going up the Bozeman Trail. And between Fort Laramie and Bozeman, he wore out 3 pairs of pants. It's 100% accurate because it's thin wool. And that's the other thing, people say, oh, that outfit looks really hot. Well, when you got thin wool that you're comfortable in, it don't last long. You get wool that you're not comfortable in, it'll last forever. It's like the pants that I had to wear, the Army issue blue wool pants. I hate them things. I absolutely hate them.
You can't wear them out.
They are heavy wool and they are hot.
So what's
But-
hotter? Commercial tan buckskin or those wool pants?
Commercial tan buckskin's hotter. And the bad thing about that is that buckskin, it wore out. It didn't wear out as fast as cloth. And so I was on one of the groups on Facebook about historic clothing, and one guy was saying that buckskin was completely overdone and they really didn't wear them all that much. It's like you come out here in the 1830s and 40s and you're wearing cloth, you're not going to have any clothes on by the time you're out here halfway through trapping season, because they're going to wear out. So those trappers wore, buckskin pants a lot. The thing of it is when you wear them in the summertime and it's hot, you sweat a lot in them, and sweat is the number one enemy of leather, especially with brain tan, because it's going to rot it out extremely fast. But it's not going to be as fast as what wool wears out.
I would argue that the Fess Parker Davy Crockett cut of buckskin leather is overdone.
Yeah.
Whereas you can tell a true, that beige colored buckskin, and that homespun with that whip stitch down the side, it's a whole different animal, and you can see it from about a mile away.
Yep. And the other thing is, when you get into buckskin clothes, is absolutely do not go with that modern tan leather. I mean, if that's all you got and you're only doing it a weekend, okay, just get the smoke color, because it's not going to be as expensive. Do it flesh side out. Don't do that fancy smooth side. People will be able to spot it a mile away. And if you do it right, you can make that look, with that fuzzy side out, you can age it and make it look like buckskin.
So you're saying don't go with that bright gold color.
Don't go with a bright gold color. Don't go with a white color. Go with that smoky colored one. The other thing is
at least with the white,
it's super hot.
I would think the white would be able, you could tea stain or something the white stuff a little better than the gold.
You could, or you could smoke it even. But with that chrome tan, you get out when it's hot and you sweating that stuff, it's going to be like peeling an orange when you go take it off.
It's going to shrink out.
I'm not kidding. It sticks to your skin.
You talk like you're this from experience. Did you wear chrome tan?
I did.
I thought you made all your own stuff.
No, when I started down at Bent's, I couldn't afford to make my own stuff. So when I started down there at Bent's, I wore what they had, which they put me in a pair of buckskin pants that were chrome tanned. And they were miserable. They were hard to get on and off when it got hot.
Is that the one you went in the creek with and then you have to wear it till it's dry?
Yeah. And they wound up rotting. And after I went in that creek, they fell apart. I had holes in places that, I couldn't, I had to wear my shirt out over the pants. I couldn't have it tucked in. The next year, they, people at Ben's Fort, they bought me a pair of buckskin pants that were brain tanned. 100% difference. I mean, brain tan's still hot, but brain tan breathes. Because you've taken that upper layer of skin off, that really slick stuff. And so it breathes a bit. Whereas that other stuff is, it's like wearing waterproof pants. It's waterproof both ways. But yeah, and I've got a piece of brain tan here. This is one that I actually tanned. It's one of the scraps I got left of it. But what I'm talking about on that smooth side is that they don't take the epidermis off, and you can see a little bit of it there, these lighter spots. I didn't completely get it off of there. That's what seals it up, and it won't breathe.
Yep.
But there was a question up here, and we missed it. It was at Little Man. See if I can find it. I'm going to highlight it here. For must reads on the Mexican War. Year of Decision by Devoto is a really good one. That is actually a really good one. Carney's Dragoons Out West is another good one. It's got a few things wrong in it, but overall it's pretty good. But that would be the two that I would hit up. And I'm trying to think. There's a few others. I'd have to go through my library and look, but definitely Year of Decision is a really good one.
One thing Kerry Stottlemyre was asking a little while ago, he on several comments through, was He was asking about if the second gen or the reissue Colt cap and ball revolvers were stepped up you birdies. Yes and no.
Yeah. So there were some that were produced. Uberti produced the parts and Colt put them together. That happened when I got my first 73 single action army. They had an actual Colt there, and they had that single action army or that Uberti cattleman. And I handled them both, and they both felt pretty similar. I mean, the Colt was a lot crisper. But I asked the guy, I said, what was the big difference in there? And he basically told me, he says, being that Colt had government contracts for the M4 carbines, because, Iraq War, Afghanistan War, that they had contracted Colt out, or contracted Uberti out to produce the parts, and then Colt would put them together. And that is why, for a time there, you could get a Uberti-made gun that would interchange parts with a Colt.
As far as the cap and balls go, the early second gens were actually made in the, I might get some of this wrong, but most of your second gens are actually made in the Ivor Johnson factory. Under spec to Colt. Like, they're as close as you can get. Everything from wood to, like, the size, the weight, everything. The black box second gens are the best. I mean, they're you don't have to worry about tearing them up, so they tend to work better than the oldest first gens. And the Signature series, I have never cared for. Everything I've seen for the Signature series of the third gens on the cap and ball stuff hasn't been good. Yeah, Hardy. Yeah, that guy probably watched way too many John Ford Westerns. Yes, Denim came out in 1953. Gots Loco said, Jolly Jake Lovell, I was making light, never was a 30 cal hawk, and how myths become tradition to later be cited as facts. That's no joke. Hardy, been watching a lot of Gunsmoke lately, seeing it now in HD, being able to pause it. I have to admit, they tried a lot harder than most other Westerns. I will give you that. Gots Loco said, the internet is responsible for my black powder knowledge. My dad became the custodian for a portion of one of his friend's father's collection. The friend died in 1975 without passing the how-to on. I like James Arness. He was pretty cool. Yeah, there was I just watched Drums Along the Mohawk again the other night, and I was impressed as far as historical accuracy to the Revolutionary War, how good that one was. Like, the clothing was good. The guns were good. They all had Fowlers. I didn't see the trapdoors. They filmed it all on location, I think, because those big fireplaces, I'd never seen them in film before. I mean, it looked really, really good, especially the remastered Drums Along the Mohawk from 1939. Some of those old movies did really good. Can you think of an old movie that does really good, Duke, historically wise? Not the Comancheros.
Not the Comancheros. Winchester 73 actually wasn't terrible. Because the guys are all using Winchester 73s and calling them Henrys. And then they have an actual Winchester 73. They're calling Winchester 73. And I'm looking at them like, they're the same gun, guys.
Yeah, but that Henry takes forever to kill. Takes forever for the bullet to get there. There's some movies that they really try hard. And I was impressed with the Tall T outside of their holsters. When that guy came out in a 1957 Western with a real Henry without a loading gate on the side, I was impressed. And like I said in the last chat, though, he had the tab all the way down against the receiver, so he wasn't going to do much with it.
And there were, they probably got away with that because there were some Henrys that were converted to 4440.
Mm-hmm. Well, he never fired it. It was he carried it gingerly and never set it down, and it was never fired.
Right. Because I know there's some 66s that were converted to 4440.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine was telling me about his granddad's he called it a Winchester, and he said it was really weird. It didn't have a wood forend, and he said it had this brass thing. You had to slide all the way up, and he said it'd been in the family for a long time, and he said it was in 4440. And I was like, that sounds like a Henry. Oh, yeah, that's what it was. It was converted to 4440 Winchester. I was like, holy Moses.
Yeah, when I was watching, because it was fun because I was watching that with Noah, the Drums Long Mohawk, and he's more into the stuff that's not guns. I mean, he's into the guns too, but he was like, that is an original horn scraped lantern.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, you see that gold lantern? He said, that is horn scraped down so thin you can see the light through it.
Yep.
I said, oh, yeah. He said, because look at that lantern over there. He said, that's a glass lantern. He said, that's a horn lantern. And he was pointing out all these little things. And he's like, these are original pieces. And so I got to looking it up. Sure enough, John Ford went around the Northeast and collected a lot of original pieces for that movie. And I think it's kind of overlooked nowadays because, man, that was good. The clothing was good. Except for a few guys that were wearing the coonskin caps and the Fess Parker cut buckskins. But Daniel Morgan's outfit had the green fringe and the spruce in their hats. And from what I understand, there was a reenactment boom there in about 1913 to 1940 there. And that was one of those movies, surprisingly, clear back in the 1930s, that had reenactors' input in it. And I thought it was very well done.
Yeah.
Carrie Stottlemyre said, I grew up on Lawrence Welk and How the West was. So did I.
And that How the West Was Won TV series with James Arness, part of that was filmed out at Bent's Fort.
How the West Was Won, the movie's pretty good historically.
Yeah, it's not bad.
A lot of
it. There's parts of it that are better than others, but it's not terrible, that first part.
The trapdoors in the Civil War are a little overshadowing,
but yeah, no, it was inside the Bent's Fort. I don't even know if it's still there or not, but they had this hand sketch drawing of Bent's Fort. It had all these names on it, and I was sitting there looking at it one day, and I got to looking, and there's one name written on there, James Arness. Another one's Brian Keith. And I didn't know that would have been filmed out there. And holy crud. So I got to looking through the photographs that they had from the 1970s when it first opened.
Mm-hmm.
There they go. They've got pictures of James Arness in there. They got a picture of Brian Keith in there. And I'm like, holy Moses. Where I was standing at not 20 minutes ago is where James Arness was standing for one shot where he was coming down the street.
How well would you rate, and I don't know if you would know this very well, but Walter Brennan's River Pirates with Lee Van Cleef and all that in the, not the Davy Crockett, in How the West Was Won, the movie.
Yeah, that one.
And I thought they were good. The double barrel pistol, the clothing, Walter Brennan's hair.
And if I remember right, that was a flintlock too.
Mm-hmm. Everything was flintlock in that.
Yeah.
Now, how Jimmy Stewart rode that canoe all the way up to the Ohio River from the Rocky Mountains, I'm not sure, but I guess he did.
It could be done.
It's quite the trip.
It's a long trip, but it could be done.
Why didn't he stop and sell those furs in St. Louis?
Yeah,
he's going all the way back to Pennsylvania with that load of furs.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah. Hardy said, I imagine back in the 30s there were a lot more original pieces kicking around grandma's attics that they could use. Yeah, I think there were.
The amount of trapdoors and Remington 1875 models that you see, there's a lot of them, especially in Civil War movies. And with the Remingtons, they can just about get away with it, except for those close-up shots where you can see the ejector rod. And I think we talked about that in our last one, because we talked about the Hollywood stuff on the last episode. But yeah,
it's about a 40-year cycle.
Yep.
Like the 1930s, they still had that 100-year stuff. By 30, 40 years later, they're starting to really kick into some of that original 1860s stuff.
Yeah.
70s stuff.
And I think it's in the movie Broken Arrow.
I haven't seen that in a long time.
The chief, Cochise, he's carrying a rifle. It's one you don't see very often. It's a single shot. It's got two triggers. One trigger opens the barrel. and the other one fires a gun. And I can't
Oh,
remember the name of that gun.
Be like a Frank Wesson type gun.
Yeah, yeah.
And I haven't seen that. So all I remember was there is a certain thing I have for sound editing when they make the gun sound real. And it's one thing I have against spaghetti westerns. They have a terrible time with gun sounds. But that movie, the guns sounded like guns. You know it?
Right. Let's see, Frank.
Only drawback to this kind of knowledge is it makes it hard to enjoy these old movies. You got to look at it, take it with a grain of salt. Movies like Shane, I'll never get over them. They're perfect. Don't matter what if they get it wrong. Even World War I movies like Sergeant York, where he has the wrong pistol through the whole thing, you know. And if you screw up with it, it don't change much.
That is the gun right there.
Is that a Frank Wesson?
Yep. That's the one he carries.
Great Pilgrim has one of those, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Carrie Stottlemyre said, now I got another movie to source. I was only seeing the series on How the West Was Won. Oh, you got to watch that movie.
If you ain't seen that movie, where you been?
That's good stuff, that movie.
Yeah. John Wayne's in it.
Yeah. John Wayne's got everybody in it. Eli Wallach, John Wayne, Lee Van Cleef, Walter Brennan, Jimmy Stewart, Reynolds, Debbie Reynolds, Gregory Peck. Oh man, just everybody's Henry Fonda.
It's got a lot of the big ones. Richard Widmark.
Yep, Richard Widmark. It was a big deal, and it was filmed in Tricolor or whatever. They filmed it with 3 different cameras.
Yep.
It was directed by John Ford, Howard Hawks, I think, and a couple other guys. And John Ford hated that big 3-camera setup because you couldn't get a close-up with it.
Colonel Potter's in there.
Yep. Oh my! Why can I not think of Henry Morgan's name?
Harry Morgan.
Harry Morgan's name. There we go. Yeah.
Oh Lord.
What do you think of Big Sky? Have you ever seen The Big Sky?
Yeah, it's been a long time. See, is that the one with
Kurt Douglas?
Kurt Douglas and Robert Mitchum?
Dewey Martin, I think's his name. And he has a swivel breech in the mountains, and that's a big deal. That's pretty cool.
Now you got me. I gotta look this one up.
Not you're thinking of Kurt Douglas and Robert Mitchum in The Way West or whatever, the wagon.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Big Sky is a black and white mountain man movie from the 50s that does an excellent job with the guns. Like lots of old trade guns and stuff in it, all muzzle loaders. And Dewey, I think his name's Dewey Martin, has a swivel breech. Okay. And it's a really big deal. Everybody in the mountains that wants that swivel breech, which would make sense.
Oh, yeah, that is an older one. Yeah. See who all's the actors in that. I think I've seen part of it.
Is his name Dewey Martin?
I have seen part of it. Yep. Kirk Douglas, Dewey. Yeah, Arthur Honeycutt's in it. That guy was on TV. I was over at Dad's house, and I caught the last bit of it.
Yeah, it's pretty good, really, for what it is. I mean, there's a few of those coonskin cap wearing guys in it, but they're in everything. Guns in the water, paint your wagon. That always gets brought up.
I was born under a wandering star.
So do you think he sang that better, or do you think he sang Red Wing better?
I'll go with Red Wing. Oh, the moon shines tonight on pretty Red Wing.
You've got to give it to him, and he was the only guy in Comancheros that sold the era correctly. He did a good job.
Yeah.
And that was when they put John Wayne in the top hat. That kind of worked all right, too. But they just didn't do the whole thing that way.
John Wayne does not look good in top hat.
Oh, Lee Marvin really kind of...
You ought to record Red Wing one of these days.
My sisters have. I suppose I could.
Maybe whenever I get out there to Kansas, we ought to do a duet on that one.
We can do it just like them two. I ain't drunk as I'm pretending to be, and neither are you. Oh, an example when I was first watched The Undefeated. About 5 to 7 years later, I watched it again. A wagon load of trapdoors immediately after the Civil War. Could have happened by 66 or
66 maybe, but not with a bunch of
67
Southerners.
definitely.
Not with a bunch of Southerners, that's for sure.
Yeah, no.
But
They was all in the northwest corner of the country at that point.
right.
Yeah, and they weren't getting out of the main army yet until about, well, let's see, Undefeated. How long after the war does that? I have to stop and think because it's been a long time. Does any time go by?
After that, it was based off of something that happened that it was right at the end of the war. Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, that's because John the horse thing. Because they could have had 66s by 68 technically, but it would have been difficult. Jolly Jake Level said The Way West was a follow-on to The Big Sky. I didn't know that. Novels by A.B. Guthrie. Mitchum in The Way West was the same character as Kirk Douglas in The Big Sky. Oh, I
That's
didn't know that.
good to know. Okay, that's probably why I got too confused.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I had no idea they were even tied together. Well, that makes
Yeah.
sense because they're both good movies.
Yeah, and that's why the Guthrie name I
had no clue. So he's the old. Cool. I like that movie too. Way West.
Yeah, that one is a good one. But anyways, here, yeah, we've been staying in 60s on this one tonight.
We're having fun. People like
Yeah.
it when we have fun.
Yes, it's a lot funner when we have fun. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and advertise a third time for anybody that's joined in late. Tales of the Trails podcast is officially live. Going to give me a second here. Post it here for all to see. And I'm posting it through both channels. And why did it only post through me? Whatever. Posted as Living Bang Bang too. So head over, check that out. First episode is a first episode of the series on Red Cloud's War. It officially went live yesterday. I just didn't advertise it until today, so that I didn't have to worry about trying to get it turned on and get this set up and everything. But yeah, head on over, check that out, and we'll be continuing doing episodes over there. Episode 2 is recorded and it is ready to go. Episode 2 is supposed to cover all of the War of 1865, and then I was going to get into the Peace Treaty of 66 and the establishment of Fort Phil Kearny. However, I got halfway through the War of 1865, and I was approaching 30 minutes on that podcast, and I kind of want to keep them in the 20-minute range if I can. Maybe later down the road, I'll start doing longer episodes, but for me to record them, it's like recording them at one time. 20 minutes is a lot easier. So the first episode, I think, is just a little over 15. I'd have to go back and look at it here. It's 17 minutes. That's what it is. The second episode is, give me a second here. See if I can do this without making a bunch of sound. Come on.
Yes, dude.
Yeah. It's 24 minutes on the second episode is what I got it cut down to. And if I'd have kept going, it probably would have wound up being an hour. But anyway, the second episode will launch here probably 2 weeks from now when we do Tales of the Trails again. I'll publish it the morning on Wednesday morning. And then that way people can see it before they come onto the chat here. Yeah, we'll try to do one every couple weeks or so. It might be once a month. It just depends on how fast I do them, because it takes more or almost as much work to record a podcast as it does to film a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because the time that I would spend out in the range making a gun video, I spend that writing the script and doing reading. And the nice thing about it is when I sit down is I can just pull the book up in front of me and I can go through, and then I can hit all the little things, little minor talking points that on a chat would mostly get overlooked because we'd be here 3 days if I did it that route.
Adrian and Dnek want to know if it was going to be on any podcast apps or just YouTube.
For right now, it's just on YouTube. As I get further down, we will start doing it into podcasts. So it'll be as I progress on. I'm going to try to get a base built up, but I've looked into uploading it to podcast sites. The one I used to use, Stitcher, is now gone. I forgot who. I think it's Spotify took over them. But I've been looking into it. Looked into Spotify. So that might be something that happen in the future. But for right now, we're just going to stick with YouTube. Hey, Doug Dukes, it's all right. We're just getting down towards the end, but
Hardy was asking if it takes the place of the old Tales of the Trails format.
Like this format?
Well, like when you do, like you would come on a live and do a just talk.
Yeah, it's going to be just, me talking. I thought about like trying to edit in background music, background noise. It's going to have the music part, but I was sitting there thinking about, it's like maybe when I'm talking about it, because when I did the episode of the hayfield fight, which I'm going to go re-record because I did that on the old condenser. I'm going to redo it here on this dynamic. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, it's the microphone. But hayfield fight I was going to do in there is like when they open a volley of fire, I was going to put in musket sounds in the background. I'm thinking now I'm not going to do that. It might be a little too distracting, but what I do have is background music, because one thing I noticed with this dynamic microphone that I'm using now, there still picks up a little background. Nowhere near as bad as that condenser. That condenser mic, I'd be sitting here recording. The refrigerator would kick on. I'd have to stop. The furnace come on. I'd have to stop. My dog sneezed. I'd have to stop and start over again. And speaking of which, my furnace just turned on. I doubt you can hear it.
Didn't hear that one.
Train goes through. Train went through the other night while I was recording. I went back and played it through. Can't hear it. And I think the only reason we heard it tonight would have come through is because I have the window open over there on that side of the house. But, with this dynamic mic, I don't have to build a whole sound box to put around me when I'm recording. So it's got better sound. But all that being said, there's still a little bit of background noise. It doesn't eliminate it, but it greatly reduces it. And I found out pretty quick, you put in background music with that, and that background noise is almost completely gone. You don't notice it at all. So I've been working on adjusting the volume on it, the intro and the outro that I recorded to put in every one of them. I'm gonna have to go re-record that or redo that because the music is a little too loud when I'm talking. So you hear Garrett singing and me talking, and it's kind of hard to understand either one. But Garrett's been helping me with that. So he's been recording some music for me. The first episode is all Garrett's music. The second episode here, I found one on YouTube that was a pretty good background music that kind of had a more somber feel because it's a more somber topic. We put that on there, but hopefully in the future, Garrett will be able to get some more for me. I'm not going to really rush him. I'll make do with what I got.
Yeah, I got you too, but time is doing it. Just like you said, sitting down and writing the script. It takes time.
It takes time. I even sit here and try to strum on a guitar. I don't sound good when I strum on a guitar. Of course, I don't have however many years experience that Garrett's been playing a guitar. I've been picking at the same song for the last 15 years and still ain't figured it out.
Oh, come on. You can play Hurt.
I can play what?
Hurt.
I'm going to have to go back and learn the chords of that one again. I tried playing that the other day. I was like, man, I forgot what the chords were. But there's one song that I wrote on the guitar. I'll even play it for you. It's one song that I wrote.
Yes, it has something to do with prison.
Yeah, it's called I'm Getting Out of Jail Tonight.
Never gets old. Carrie Stottlemyre said sounds on Dukes is sounding better than ever. And I remember talking about leather sewing machines.
Oh, that's been an age ago. Yeah, I've kind of given up on it.
Carrie was around back in the Bowflex days.
Yeah.
And before.
Me and
I was about to say, how many of you guys remember the 6-hour stream? I wasn't involved in that one.
There was 2 of them we did. We did them back to back. 2 different
Raiders.
Yeah, on Fraser's Raiders, and Fraser's Raiders is still up there. We did 2 6-hour streams. We started at 6 o'clock night we started like 8 o'clock and went till 2, 3 in the morning.
You guys want to see where this all started? Go type in the not so lively live chat number uno.
Numero uno, yeah, that one.
That takes a long time ago. Not so lively live chat. I just remember farming, and somehow I got on your channel through somebody, and I was like, I started farming. It was the middle of the night. I was going to go all night, and when I got done with that 6-hour field, you guys were still going.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, and that was back before I didn't know a lot then. I still don't know a lot, but I know more now than I did then.
I'll tell you what drove me crazy though back then was you would start on a topic of history and someone would change the subject.
Yeah.
I was like, if someone would ever just let him go, just let him go.
Right. The last one I did over there was with the Adventure Cowboy.
That was a good interview.
Yeah. Let's see. There was 2, 3, or several. Oh, I only got 3-hour chats on here.
Yeah, it's pretty dead, Hardy. Go in with fortitude. They ain't quite like the Tales of the Trail streams.
Right. They were, and I remember we got kind of raunchy on some of them. I ain't going to do it on here, but yeah, there was some, that was way back in the good old days.
You had 2 rules, just like we have 2 rules now, only you only applied 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. No cursing.
And no politics.
And no politics. And politics is the one I enforced the hardest.
Well, yeah, usually after about 3 years, rule number 1 faded into non-existence. After about 3 hours, I should say.
It's like I can put a filter on because if you know me personally, there's a reason why I got to be known as Al Swearingen for a while. Just go watch Deadwood.
If you want to go back and see some really cool Plowboys ghost takes, a couple of those Plowboy ghost episodes from way back then, those were good.
And if you want to see me get like that now, put me in front of a copy machine.
I don't know I haven't seen a copy machine a long time ago.
Yeah, I at work today I got in a little bit of trouble because I got in front of the copy machine and it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do, and it got called about every name under the sun. It got called a name that I'd never even heard before, and it came out of my mouth.
One of these days, I'm going to have Angelica or somebody make you up a shirt that says Fraser's Raiders with the YouTube logo on it, even if you're not going to sell it. I just want you to have one.
I tried to do that. I tried to make them, and Bing's it had Raiders on there. That's the football team. I got my account deleted from that T-shirt company.
Well, we for your birthday one year, remember we bought you that Baby Dragoon, that Wells Fargo model.
Oh yeah.
And snapper engraved Captain Fraser of Fraser's Raiders on there.
Yep, I still have that sitting here in the safe. It's one of the few Captain balls that I've never shot, and I probably never will because that thing is just absolutely beautiful.
Oh, that's what I told him. The snapper said, "What do you want to engrave?" I said, "Captain Duke Fraser of Fraser's Raiders."
Yep, burn into the handle, and that thing is beautiful. I mean, they fire blued the trigger on it, and it's got nickel or silver plating on the grip.
Nickel.
It's beautiful, and the case hardening is when Birdie started going back to really good case hardening colors. It was just absolutely beautiful. Ooh, excuse me. But yeah, no, that was way back when. But anyway, yeah. So it has evolved into the Tales of the Trails live chat, and now the Tales of the Trails podcast. And Tales of the Trails podcast is going to be kept separate from this channel. So the Tales of the Trails live chat will still take place here because I don't want it to get all mixed up over there. Yeah. I want that over there to be just the podcast. We'll keep the live portion here.
I'm glad you decided to do this because us long-time Duke Frazier subscribers, we remember a time when things got pretty scarce and dried up for a while.
Yeah, and it just
We didn't know if you were alive or dead or what, and then you came back with a boat.
yeah. And I haven't uploaded much videos, and what it comes down to is that it was too much work for
one guy.
It was costing me too much money to keep it going. You want to know how much you can burn up money wise when you're starting to film shooting videos and doing a lot of shooting, and the amount of time it took is like my days off. I go to work. I worked 5 days a week out there at Bent's Fort in the summer, and then I'd have to go and shoot for a day and then be in here at the computer for a day. I never got any rest. It was just running me ragged. And I dumped a lot of money, $1,000 camera. I've got a $200 microphone.
One of the best microphones out there, I think. But,
yeah. And so
if you're not in any wind.
Yeah, exactly. That thing was terrible. Actually, yeah, I dumped a lot more than that because then I got a $200 lavalier mic that's wireless. So yeah, it was expensive. It took a lot. It took a lot to set up. I'd have to haul the guns and everything out. I'd have to haul the cameras and equipment out. And I did that in hopes that the YouTube channel would really take off. Well, it was about that time YouTube really started cracking down on gun channels, and I finally just said I've had enough. I'm burnt out. I'm not getting out of it what I want to. I'm not getting the views out of it. And so it got to where the only time I was filming is when Garrett had come up to Wyoming, or I go out there, and you still go back and you look at those videos and they don't have that many views.
Well, when you were about 2016, you not only were one of the few people doing cap and ball revolver, which, by the way, there was a 10-year period where cap and ball revolvers were roaring. I caught the tail end of it. They're not anymore. You can't sell cap and ball revolvers on YouTube right now to anybody. But you had the best quality, I think, out of probably anybody putting out cap and ball review. You were up there, I would say, tied with Cap and Ball, the channel.
Yeah.
And, you had your music, you had your green screens, you had your format down, you had your information down, and you could put it all in that little 10-minute sub video. And when I go back, those videos still get more views than videos I can put out today.
Yeah.
You got a lot of views on those videos.
But a lot of those views came years after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like right now the Walker video is up there pretty high. Some of those, yeah, it took 2, 3, 4 years before all of a sudden they took off.
Yeah.
Then there'd be one like where I was carrying the black or cap and ball revolvers, and that thing blew up right away, and then it tanked for a long time, and now it's back to number one again. But it was one of those. I based my videos kind of off of how Mike Bellevue did it because I liked his style, I liked his way of presenting, and so I molded mine to be based off of his. His was the foundation that I started with. Yeah, like I said, put a lot of work into it and
a lot of research.
And the thing was, is back then, and I went back and listened to some of my videos, and I was like, holy crap, what is this idiot doing? But I was putting more time into production of video than I was putting into research. Now with this podcast, I can put a heck of a lot of time into the research. It's going to force me to read a lot of these books that I've bought and had for several years and haven't had a chance to read. I've just went through and picked out information. Yeah, I've decided to go more towards the history route of things. I enjoy the history, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy shooting the guns, but right now, if I was to start up doing cap and ball revolvers again, one, like Garrett said, you couldn't sell a video, and two, I'd run out of caps and powder, and that's going to be hard to replace here.
When the caps died, interest in cap and ball revolvers died.
COVID killed cap and balls.
It did. But now it's flintlocks.
Yep.
Flintlocks, you put a video out on a flintlock right now, especially, you can just, depending on the size of your channel, you can go.
And that's because a flintlock doesn't require a cap.
Exactly. And everybody figured that out.
Now, whenever caps start getting produced in greater quantities, and they are making a comeback. I'm starting to see them in places I haven't seen them for a long time.
The trouble is my interest after almost a 9-hour documentary on Colt cap and ball revolvers, if you put it all together, I'd read so much that my interest started fading because I started reading the same thing over and over and over again. You know the feeling?
Yep.
Then I was like, all right, now let's move back to fur trade. Now let's move on forward to trapdoors and kind of cover something else.
And that's the other thing on YouTube. You can only sell the same thing over and over again so many times.
Yeah. And your standard 51 Navy and 60 Army, it's hard to make a video now because there's thousands of them out there.
I mean, the 51 Navy, I did 3-4 videos with that. And if it wasn't for the fact that there was a different thing that I had with those, it would have been the same video over and over again. There's one of them, there was the main video on the 51 Navy, and then the Arizgon bullet molds. If it wasn't for Mark Hubbs and Arizgon bullet molds, I wouldn't have had a lot of content when I was starting to get things going there. Mm-hmm. But at that time, it was, the YouTube was kind of a fun thing on the side. The research I was doing at that time didn't exactly correlate with what I was doing on YouTube. My research at that time was fur trade because I was at Bent's Fort. That's everything I researched and studied. But now I've been researching and studying later part of the Indian Wars and such. So that's why the podcast is going to focus in that time period a lot.
Yep. Hardy said an idea for a podcast episode, maybe do a living historian guide, get into the weeds on the material culture, maybe react to old photos and such. Hardy, we need to do that because there are people out there who are actively trying to kill living history in museums and forts and places like that. I didn't believe it till I read the article the other day. I sent it to Duke and he's like, yep, I already read it. And you were a part of that mess. Not that you were on their side, but I can see now after reading that article, there are people that think that it's politically non-correct to do historical reenacting now, or not reenacting, but historic living history.
Yeah, and I've had this conversation with a couple of guys. One of them's on this chat here that do living history, and these guys are from Texas, where this particular person that evaluated out there at Bent's Fort, I'm going to say it, I don't care, I want to get the word out. But she evaluated it, and I heard from the people that worked there that she came in, walked around the fort for like 30 minutes, and then did this entire evaluation. The Park Service hired her to come in and evaluate it. And she basically said, that it was a bunch of old white guys getting together on a weekend. Mm-hmm. That there was not enough diversity. Well, I hate to tell you, a really good friend of mine, African-American, he does Buffalo Soldier living history. He's been out at Bent's for years.
Bad Hand has been doing
Michael
it for
Bad Hand. But he hadn't been out to Bent's Fort. He came out there once when I was there. Because with Bad Hand, you got to pay him to come in, and you get your money's worth, no doubt. But at that time, all I knew was that we had volunteers that come in basically for food over the weekend. They might take a little money for gas. But Bad Hand, we had to pay. And then after I saw Bad Hand's presentation and what all he brought, I was like, no wonder it's like half the money that this guy got paid, he had to put into shipping costs to get his stuff down there. So Bad Hand it was really good. We had a Native American that come down regularly and participated. We had a lot of Hispanic people come there and participate. So it was a real slap in the face when she said it was just a bunch of white guys getting together. And that the other groups were not being represented. It's like, no, they're being represented as best we can. Maybe we should have a few more, but it's the best we can do. And we do our best to make sure everybody's story is told.
If you guys want a fire lit under you about living history, just go look up Bent's Old Fort living history replacement. And it's not just there. They want to do it to everything. Everywhere.
I wrote an article. I wrote a letter to the editor to the local news group, and they published it. And, it got a lot of good response. And just for giggles and grins, I'm going to look it up here and I'm going to share it, and you all can read it and share your thoughts.
I'll tell you this. They want to replace living historians with touchscreen screens with a sanitized, approved message for everyone, supposedly. And we're not getting into politics here, but that's just wrong. They're wanting to clean up the history and tell it the way they want to tell it. It's what they want to do.
They're just gutting it. It's being gutted is what it is. I'm going to have to do some digging here and see if I can find it. But it's really sad. And there's a lot of people that are upset because the volunteers were never consulted on this. Let's see here. It might be under that section. It's going to take me a minute to find it.
It's starting to
There
look
it is.
like they're going to start getting their way, and you will no longer see living history as a reenactment at all. You're going to start seeing touchscreens.
Yeah. And everybody, the Park Services put out a thing saying, oh, you know, it's this and that. We're not trying to get rid of it. We're not trying to make bigger changes than what we have to. Well, you know what? I've worked for the Park Service now. I put in about 10 years in the Park Service. And one thing I found out is that this isn't just one place. It's a Park Service wide thing, because the stuff that they were talking about doing at Bent's Fort had already been done when I got to Fort Laramie with getting rid of the livestock. And the things that Fort Laramie was talking about getting rid of had already been gotten rid of at Bent's Fort, or were in the process. So it's not just a localized thing. It is a Park Service wide thing.
No livestock, no firing of original blanks and original guns. No.
Well, that one,
I get that to an extent, but
the Park Service did away with firing original guns, and they did that way back in the 70s, because it's one of those things. You damage that original gun, there is no replacing it. Absolutely no replacing it. And so with that, I can get on board. They used to do fire with live bullets at these demonstrations back in the 70s. That one I can understand getting rid of, because where they were shooting at one place I worked at, there, put it this way, they had a backstop, but there was a road above that backstop about a mile back. And guess what? If the bullet goes up and over that hill, you could hit a car coming into the park. So that one I could be on board with. I can be on board with not shooting the originals, but it's going to get to where they just cut everything. It's going to be bleached living history, if they even let living history stick around.
And what's sad is they're already dying.
Yeah.
And they're just speeding the process along. But it's like, I remember in the early 90s as a kid, like my greatest summer adventure was I would go watch Michael Dove, is the name he was under at the time, at Fort Larned, do an entire talk of native fur trade and guns, and I didn't care. I mean, I liked the cavalry guys, and I liked the cannon guys that they had there. They'd shoot those big cannons, and I remember recoil. So I don't know if they shot a live round there or not in the early 90s. Maybe they didn't. Maybe it was just the powder. And I loved all that stuff, but my biggest thing was I wanted to go see the trappers and the Indians at Fort Larned. That was all I wanted to see, because they were different, you know?
And the thing of it is that the interest in living history is waning. It's just a sign of the times. And a lot of these guys that are at these events, they've been doing it since before you and I were even born. There's guys, you know, that was coming to Bent's Fort, they've been doing it since the 70s. But yeah, there's definitely a change coming, and that change has been progressive, but it is definitely escalating here lately. And the one thing that really concerns me with Bent's Fort is the things that are being implemented were things that were being put forth as an idea by a guy that started there after I did. And he wanted to get rid of everything. He wanted to do this, that, and the other. Didn't think we needed to be doing this. And basically, the new superintendent is saying the same things he's saying. So it makes me wonder if the super is not being a puppet for it. But
Hardy said there's a big difference between fighting old stereotypes and sanitizing history. Choose wisely.
Yep.
The thing about those stereotypes, without saying the wrong thing here, the stereotypes themselves are history in a weird way. And what you need to learn is not necessarily to stereotype the people that way, but maybe look into why that stereotype exists from one side or the other. Both sides. You know, natives say that white people smell like old socks and rotten logs. You know, or white people think the native is a savage. Look at it from both sides. You need to study those things to understand. You know, you can't just erase this whole mentality of one side or the other.
It's like a good friend of mine at Fort Laramie, and unfortunately he's retiring. But he said he's got this poster in his office. I don't even know if they still let him have it up, but it basically says history is not for you to like or dislike. It's there for you to learn from.
Yep.
And no matter how much you do, you cannot change history. It's in the past. All you can do is learn from it and move on.
How many times have you heard that, it's the same exact thing, just depends on the decade. In the 30s and 40s, the savages were the baby killers and the murderers, and now today it's the cavalry, the whites, the Union Army, baby killers or murderers. And guess what, guys? It's all true.
Mm-hmm.
That's called war.
Yeah,
it's uncivilized.
And it's one of those things I talked about with regards to Sand Creek, is that at Sand Creek, there was a couple of things that played into why even back then it was recognized almost immediately as an atrocity. One was it's close enough to civilization at that point that it gets talked about. The other thing is that what the soldiers did at Sand Creek was similar warfare to what other tribes had done. And if you want to argue about that, look up Massacre Canyon in Nebraska, where a village of Pawnee was attacked in a very similar fashion to Sand Creek, and they were wiped out, but it wasn't soldiers. It was other Native American tribes. But what made it an atrocity was that the ones that committed it, the soldiers, were supposed to be civilized people. Well, in reality, it was the same kind of warfare. It was kind of a tit for tat, but they weren't supposed to do that kind of thing. And so that was one of the reasons why it blew up so much as an atrocity back then. And it was an atrocity. But the same thing had happened, dozens of other times in other places in the West before that. Nobody batted an eye. California during the gold rush.
Yep.
Lots of tribes were completely wiped out. If you've ever heard of Ishi, watch the movie Last of His Kind with Graham Greene in it. Ishi was a Native American, was found in California, didn't speak a word of English. His entire tribe had been wiped out. But you never hear about that.
Nope. Don't you think and you got to give, when people talk about the movies in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, put yourself in those people's shoes and realize they're one generation removed from the fear. On both sides.
Yep.
It's easy to look at it now. We have 150 years to rationalize it. They didn't. Their parents lived through that. Yeah. And it's a terrifying thing. And it's on, like I said, though, it's on both sides. And it's called warfare. It's bad. It's terrible.
But another one, if you want to read a point of view of a woman that was captured in 1864, read the account of Fanny Kelly.
Yeah.
And tell you what, it really bring to home some of the things that were being done. And like I said, it was both sides did atrocities, but one side was supposed to be better than the other. And that's, again, why Sand Creek got the attention that it did, is because that wasn't supposed to happen by white soldiers, even though, yeah, it had happened all over the West.
There's a Pete Kosky song on YouTube called Hungry Mother. If you've never heard that song, if you're all one side or all the other, go listen to that song and come back and tell me that you don't have a little bit of feeling all the way around for that deal. That's just why I listened to it the other day and I was like, brutal. But then when you really get into studying these people and you realized how tough they were because they lived through that brutality. And it doesn't matter what happened. If you live you're one of these families that runs and lives in an 80 square foot stockade for 6 months surrounded by natives who are threatening to scalp you. That's going to breed something into you. It'll take generations to go away. It doesn't matter what happens. And it happens on the other side too. So,
and I had a thought here and now it has left my head. I had a good thought there and it left my head. Well, it'll come back eventually.
Well, we're not getting political here. This is just something that has to be changed, or our entire focus will just disappear of what we do.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. And one thing that always aggravates me with people is that when you talk about Sherman going through Georgia, total warfare, burning homes, and, there are innocent people being killed during that.
But that's just war.
There's rape and torture, but that's just war. And,
exactly.
and that was needed to be done. But that same soldier
guy
goes out west, does the same thing out here.
That's genocide.
Oh, yeah. And it's like, no, don't be hypocritical.
Yep.
It's all bad.
What I gathered, and I spent a lot of time in the last 2 years from my own area studying the letters that people wrote. And they actually, luckily, the Crescent newspaper that was around from 1870 to 1927 collected all these, and they're still readable. They didn't hate the Indians. They didn't care for them because they were killing, they killed 15 people in 1 week right here between me and the Oklahoma border, 1873. But the blame that all the settlers were putting on was the government. They hated Sherman. They hated Sheridan. They hated Grant. They were like, these guys are sitting up there in their ivory towers in Washington, poking the bear, and they come in here and kill us.
And another thing that gets me is Kit Carson gets a bad rap because of his campaign against the Navajo in the 1860s. And he was following orders. He didn't follow orders completely because he was supposed to kill any man, any boy over the age of 12. He didn't. He took a lot of them prisoner. And then marched them to Bosque Redondo. But when you tell people that order came all the way from Abraham Lincoln, suddenly they don't want to have the conversation anymore. Because Abraham Lincoln was the great emancipator. He did all these wonderful things. Yet Lincoln wanted to wipe out a lot of the native tribes so that they wouldn't be a problem anymore.
Yep.
Now, granted, he did commute because up in Minnesota, they were going to hang every base about any person that had anything to do with the uprising there in Minnesota, the Minnesota massacre. But he still ordered the hanging of 38 chiefs. A couple of them didn't even have anything to do with it. So, great emancipator or somebody that helped perpetrate genocide.
And what a lot of people
one or the other.
A lot of people don't realize is one thing that bugs me when people talk about the Wild West is when they put the Wild West between 1873 and 1895 or 1900. Oh yeah, it's pretty tame by then. Okay. Those guys that came out here in 1840, basically, I like to say they came out here with packed their coffins on their back because they knew they weren't ever going home. And they did it because they wanted their kids to have land, future generations. They knew they weren't going to get the goodie out of it. And they did, a lot of them. But the mentality back then was, I'm going to die out here.
Yeah.
And that is a whole different world when you look at things in that perspective. The only thing you care about is keeping your kids alive in the next generation. Therefore, kids are always the target of the enemy.
Yep.
On both sides. Kids, that's their target. And if you don't believe me that the whites had that, go look at Custer's orders from Sheridan. Wipe them out. And the natives had the exact same thing. So it's a whole different mentality that we today will never understand. And
that's one thing about the Fannie Kelly book. Is she's in there, and one of the things she talks about is, the racism on both sides. She said, that the whites were the superior race. However, she said that the Indians basically told her that they were the superior race. So it's on both sides. So what happens when you have two cultures that can't understand each other, won't understand each other, come together, conflict's going to ensue. And we see the same thing to this day. I mean, it's going on over right now in the Middle East.
Yep, and the Indians have been fighting each other and killing each other their entire lives, and the Americans have just come out of the bloodiest war we're ever going to see. What did they say on Lonesome Dove? Life's cheap on a Canadian.
Yep.
Life is cheap.
Yeah, the only time that you see, kind of the peaceful interactions is that period of the 1830s and 40s, and even then there was conflicts. The mountain men would come out, and a lot of them would make friends with tribes. There were quite a few that made friends with the Crow. There were some that made friends with the Lakota. There were ones that made friends with the Cheyenne, with the Arapaho. Some made friends with the Ute. Not a lot of them, but there were those that made friends with the Ute. With the Blackfeet up in Montana and there, they had made friends with Hudson Bay Company, and Hudson Bay Company basically said, go kill every American you can find. So that led to a lot of conflicts. But, you see this dissimulation in a sense, because these trappers come out, they adopt a lot of the native culture. They marry in, they raise children, they stay out in the West, raise those children up. But once you get into the 1860s and the Army gets involved, everything goes to hell.
Mm-hmm. It's it gripes me. The people today, we don't trust the government, right? The government does it, we hate it. But those same people that are all about that, you know what I'm about to say? You go back 100 years, and what's their views? Government can do no wrong. It's the same government, guys.
Yep.
They lied to the Indians. They lied to you and me. They still do.
And that's one thing that's going to be, pointed out in episode 3 of Red Cloud's War, is that Red Cloud's War blows up because even the government doesn't know what the government's doing.
That is no joke. That is it right there. And I've talked to Ethan about this a lot, and I'm not going to get on this, but we were having a discussion with some other Army guys that he knew of what drove Custer into that camp in that village that day. And Ethan put it eloquently. He said it's the same people that, like I said, I'm not getting into politics, but there's a group of people out there that are all about America should go to war with Russia today because we'd be home by Christmas, because America can't be defeated. There was once a man that supposedly, quote unquote, said we can ride through the Indian nations with 80 men. Custer, never been defeated. There's no way I'm getting beat out here today. I'm the United States military. That right there, and it's still around today. Don't get me wrong. Oh, there's people that just don't get it. The exceptionalism of the United States government has killed more people in these battles than, or what they believe to be the exceptionalism. Then they get out there way over their heads, and they're like, "Oh, we never trained for this. We had no idea this could happen."
Yeah, and like I said, it'd be discussed here is when Red Cloud's War opened up. At that time, you had two factions, and it's a political thing. It's not really a party thing, but it's a political thing. You had what was called Hawks and Doves. The Hawks wanted to come out here, use military force, and get everything they wanted. The Doves wanted to negotiate peace. Well, two of them couldn't make an agreement back in Washington, so what do? The Doves send out a delegation to talk peace with the tribes, and at the same time, the Hawks send out the military to go in and enforce what they want done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? Both of them all show up at Fort Laramie about the same time, and as they're talking peace with the prominent chief that they need to talk peace with, all of a sudden the Army walks in, he finds out what they're here to do, and it's like, yeah, well, we're not talking anymore now. We're going to fight.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, I got off my soapbox now, but that was just the one thing that struck me about Custer. Out of everything I've read, what got him killed? His underestimation of the enemy.
Arrogance.
Exactly. Arrogance. Yeah, that's what I should have said right there.
Arrogance.
And believe me, it's still just as strong today in the military as it was back then.
So anyway, that's our 3-hour tangent.
Sorry.
So once again, to remind all you that came in last, we got a new Tales of the Trails podcast. I'm going to post that link. Oh, nope, I got to go back and copy that link because I posted another link. But head on over, check out the Tales of the Trails podcast, episode 1, which is on the Bozeman Trail. First episode of the series on Red Cloud's War is up. I'm not sure how many episodes that series is going to be because I thought one episode was just going to be one episode, and it has now turned into 2. But we're going to keep it going as long as we can. And next week, or the next time we have Tales of the Trails, live stream, which is going to remain on this channel. So we'll keep streaming it here on Duke Fraser Productions and 11 Bang Bang. But next week on Wednesday, I'll try to have episode 2 ready to go Wednesday morning. Over on the Tales of the Trails podcast page. And then that way y'all can go watch it. And then when we come back, maybe we'll discuss a little bit about what was going on in that. So anyway, we'll run here for a few more minutes and then shut her down because I know Garrett's tired. I'm tired. I have to work tomorrow and I still got to do some more stuff. I got to finish writing the script for episode 3 now, but
I'm actually having fun. Probably having too much fun. I'm going to get us in trouble.
Yeah. But I noticed I was sitting up there watching and we've dropped down about 20 people. So
yeah,
it's, once you start dropping down, it's time to call her good because it's just going to keep on dropping. But anyway, if anybody's got any questions, comments, concerns related to history, because we'll get off of our tangent we've been on for the last hour. Go ahead and pop up in there. What's 11 Bang Bang got coming up?
I have no idea.
Oh, you really stepped away from it, didn't you?
Yeah, I haven't been involved in it for about 3 weeks. So kind of Ethan's deal now, for the moment anyway, for the foreseeable future.
So when's next Smoke in the Woods?
Just released one this morning.
Yeah, I started watching it. I haven't finished it yet. I was watching Noah there start a fire with a flintlock.
He did pretty good.
Yeah, it works good.
He got that inner bark, cottonwood bark, and as for a nest, and away we went. But no, I don't know. I'm not setting any dates or videos on that because I'm like you. I just want to do it and have fun with it.
Yeah.
And so I may put one out next week. It may be a month from now. Who knows? Whenever I feel like it, I guess. But right. I don't know. It'll probably be some kind of cooking thing or something like that. I like doing those kind of videos.
Yeah, I was planning on going out to Kansas coming up this next week, but I think that plans are getting scrapped because I got thinking it's like all what we've talked about getting done when I go out there. I ain't going to have enough time to do it in one day because that's just about all I'd have is one day.
I tell you what, though, I've gotten, since I've let Ethan take over that channel, I've got a lot more reading time.
Yeah.
And I've had some time to record some songs and make bags, and I made some moccasins. And
well, episode 4 of the Tales of the Trails podcast is going to be on Fetterman, so we got to get that Fetterman song.
I keep forgetting about that. Yeah, I'll do that this Sunday.
But yeah, so but anyway, yeah, so like I said, check out Tales of the Trails. We'll get that thing up and going. Hopefully that turns out to be pretty successful, but nice thing about it is I'm already spending the money on the book, so it's not really costing me. The only thing I've had to invest in is a $50 mic to get it rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, books I was already buying.
That's the cool thing. That's the good thing about you told me when you kind of burned out, that was when you started reading a lot. And I found that out too. It's like the first Sunday I didn't have to go make a video. I just sat in my chair and read for like 6 hours straight, the Trapper's Journal.
Right.
And I was like, man, this is awesome. I didn't write a single note. I didn't pause and go look stuff up. I just read. It was great.
Jolly Jake Lovell said, Fetterman's arrogance put Custer's in a shadow. Yeah, you think that's bad? Look at Grattan.
It gets worse the further back you go.
Grattan was a very ambitious man. He took 29 men against, probably 800 warriors. Fetterman was a little less ambitious. He took 80 men against 1,000. And Custer wasn't ambitious at all. He took 5 companies.
But only wound up with 210 or so with him.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? The first guy that come along, what is his name? Why can I not? The next one. Miles.
Yeah.
Miles was the first one that took it all to heart and won everything that he went in with because he didn't make those mistakes. He won everything from the Chicago riots to the Indian Wars to the Spanish-American War. he didn't make those mistakes. He showed up with every bit of artillery he could find and bombed them from a distance.
Saboteur, that's pretty good.
I remember when I was drilling oil down in, we were drilling on a reservation down in Oklahoma, and we hit an actual gusher, like the kind you see on TV. We don't see those around here, but we did down there. And this Indian lady, a couple days after we was cleaning the rig off, come up with this big bowl of chili, and she said, "We forgive you for Custer." I'll never forget that. She laughed and laughed. She said, "This oil, we forgive you for Custer." That was down around Washita.
Yeah. And that's one of the other things too, is like, they've tried to put Washita as a massacre, and it's one of those things that it's kind of right there on the borderline. It's nothing compared to Sand Creek.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a lot of innocents that were killed in there. But Custer just about got wiped out there. If it hadn't been for the fact that the villages were staggered out over a 5-mile length instead of all concentrated together, if they'd have been all concentrated, Custer would have got killed right there.
Mm-hmm.
Custer's last stand had been down there in Oklahoma. Which we will do an episode on the Kidder. That one's probably going to be a shorter episode. But that actually might even be put in when I get to Washita, because that's the next thing I'm thinking about. Actually, the next series after Red Cloud's War is over is I'm thinking about going from Sand Creek to Washita and then getting into the 1874 wars down there. But there'll be an episode on Kidder, or at least talks about Kidder. So, all right. Well, I guess we're at our 3-hour mark, so we might as well start shutting this thing down. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming on here. This has been a great chat. I think we hit just a little over 70.
72 once.
So 72. And a lot of that is because we're broadcasting it over the 2 channels, because most of the attention gets on 11 Bang Bang, because mine just don't get advertised all that much anymore.
Guys, I'd have to ask, guys, if I just next week, if we advertise it on Dukes and I step off of here, if everybody made an effort to let everybody else know it was going to be on Dukes, I think we could still do it there. Like all you people in the chat said, 2 weeks from now, we might be doing it on Duke's channel. I don't know.
Yep.
Just whatever Duke thinks.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah. We'll try it again, but every time we try it, we wind up doing both of them because we don't hardly break 30 when we do it just on mine. But April 3rd, we will be doing Tales of the Trails here on Duke, Fraser Productions, and probably 11 Bang Bang. But just be aware that the live stream's not moving over to the new channel. Because one, I don't even think I can do live broadcasts yet on that channel. You have to have that subscriber minimum, I think, still. And two, I just want the new channel to be just the podcast. That's all I want over there. Be a little easier to keep track of that. So anyway, be sure to check out the new channel. First episode again is up there. Next episode will pop up sometime next week, probably on Wednesday, or 2 weeks, on Wednesday the 3rd, and we'll get this thing rolling. So anyway, again, thank you all for coming on. Then next week is Reload Show.
Mm-hmm. Supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly.
Let's see what Ethan pulls out of his hat for that one.
Yeah. So keep an eye out for that. I know last week it got canceled last minute because some equipment, I guess, broke down. But keep an eye out for that. I don't know if I'll be over on that one or not. We'll see how it goes. But anyways, definitely Tales of the Trails will have something. So again, thank you all for coming on. Catch you on the next one. Y'all stay tuned. Keep your powder dry. Adios.